Chapter 581. After coming to the surface, Wu-Ming found that the sky was completely dark. It's already this late. Wu-Ming carefully looked at the moon in the sky that was almost the same as the moon in the ordinary world. Calculating the time by the moon's position, it was already midnight. After reading some books about this world, Wu-Ming thought that in this world where gods and Buddhas walked everywhere, the moon should have been taken by the moon god. In the end, it was still hanging in the sky. But maybe the moon god was happy to do so. No longer paying attention to the moon, Wu-Ming began to walk towards the outskirts of No Name's base. I hope I didn't miss a good show. No Name's base wasn't small. It could accommodate more than 100 people. Plus, it was bedtime, so Wu-Ming didn't meet the other members of No Name. Jiu Yua Suka, Haru I Yaori, and even Black Rabbit were probably already asleep. After all, staying up late wasn't good for the girl's skin, and there was a competition tomorrow. But Ren and 16 Knights probably couldn't go back to sleep. 16 Knights' proposal to fight the Infernal King was obviously not a random proposal, so it wasn't impossible for 16 Knights and Ren to have a candlelight talk tonight. But with 16 Knights' brain, there shouldn't be a need for a candlelight talk, which meant that Ren should be asleep. And in Wu-Ming's opinion, 16 Knights definitely wouldn't sleep. That guy is a smart guy. It's impossible that he didn't think that Forsgaro would send people to play dirty. The good show Wu-Ming mentioned before was this. After all, this trick had worked against the opponent time and time again. How could the opponent give up using this trick just because he was tricked during the day? As Wu-Ming spoke, he expanded the range of his spiritual perception. In an instant, No Name's entire base was enveloped by Wu-Ming's spiritual power. Over there, Wu-Ming revealed an expression that said he expected it, and then walked in the direction of his perception. In Wu-Ming's perception, Wu-Ming saw 16 knights standing in front of a small forest. However, not only did Wu-Ming sense 16 knights, but he also sensed a group of thieves in the woods. However, Wu-Ming couldn't help but complain about the other party's sneaking technique. Perhaps in front of ordinary people, the other party's technique was quite perfect, but in Wu-Ming's eyes, the other party was like a big light bulb walking in the dark. It was hard not to notice. To put it simply, 16 knights had already discovered them. Boom! It sounded like something had exploded. Wu-Ming didn't need to look to know that it was 16th knights. After walking over unhurriedly, this was the scene that greeted him. Reverse 16 Knights smiled as he weighed the small stones in his hand. He looked at the 5 or 6 assassin-like people lying on the ground in front of him. There was also a crater in front of them that looked like it had been hit by a cannonball. There was no doubt that these people were wearing the blessing of night stealth, but because their levels were too low, they couldn't hide from 16 Knights. As for the crater in front of them, it was obvious from the rock in 16th Knight's hand that it was caused by the rock 16th Knight threw. What an inhuman human, Wu-Ming complained to his heart. Oh, isn't it little brother? You finally came out of the library. Although he had already noticed Wu-Ming's spirit, 16 Knights still had a, oh, what a coincidence look on his face. I'm still a little worried, so I came out to take a look. Wu-Ming looked at the brown-clothed people who were obviously frightened. But it seems that I have nothing to do. After all, I can't let you be in the limelight for everything. 16 Knights shrugged and deliberately showed a helpless expression. However, 16 Knights' helplessness made Wu-Ming smile helplessly. He could only say that he was indeed a problematic child. What happened? Ren, who was originally awakened after falling asleep, ran over. As you can see, Guard's dirty trick has been taken care of by 16 Knights. Wu-Ming shrugged. Then, Wu-Ming heard the brown-clothed people whispering. Such strength. Could it be that the rumor of defeating the water god is true? If that's the case, we could be saved. Wu-Ming instantly understood that these guys were the pawns of Guard who were using the hostages of their community as hostages to control them. Let me tell you in advance, the hostages in Guard's hands have been killed by Guard. What? After these people heard it, they were all in disbelief. Our companions here have the ability to make Guard reveal the truth. Guard has personally told us to kill the hostages directly. Wu-Ming added, these people were silent. But thinking about it carefully, after those hostages were taken away, they indeed never saw those hostages again. Wait, Mr. Villo, Why did you tell them directly? Ren looked at Wu Ming with some concern. Ren's meaning was naturally to consider the other party's feelings. After all, the hostages who had been threatened were killed from the beginning, and it was inevitable that some people would not be able to accept it. I think the little brother did a good job. I don't expect to consider their feelings. These people have helped Guard do a lot of such things. 16 Knights said sarcastically. I'm very sorry. I'm obviously here to harm you. But at this moment, I made a willful request. But please listen to me. Then, the leader spoke out his request. Guard is relying on the protection of the Demon King to do whatever they want in the outer sect of 210-5380. If possible, we hope that you can beat Guard to a pulp in the gift competition tomorrow. Please. A brown-clothed person who looked like the leader walked forward and bowed deeply to Wu Ming and the other two. Please. The other brown-clothed people also bowed to Wu Ming and the other two. 16 Knight's face showed an expression of, I was waiting for you to say that. Then, he grabbed Ren's shoulder. No problem. Guard, the Demon King's minion, will be defeated by the community led by Ren Russell. Thank you very much. The brown-clothed people responded in unison. And Ren Russell, the 11-year-old child, was stunned on the spot. Hey, a moment later, after Wu Ming gave them some instructions, the brown-clothed people all retreated. Wu Ming and the other two also moved from the courtyard outside to the inside of the house. In the boardroom-like room, 16 Knights was enjoying the night view, while Wu Ming was sitting on the sofa reading a book, constantly flipping through it. Wu Ming used his spirit power to take it out when he passed by the library. Ren, on the other hand, stood beside 16 Knights with a pained expression. Mr. 16 Knights, why did you say that? Ren was naturally referring to the community led by Ren Russell, that 16 Knights mentioned. Although I accepted your suggestion to take down the Demon King as the goal, but to directly use my name to publicize it, it's a little. To put it bluntly, Ren was embarrassed. Just forgive 16 Knights this time, Ren. After all, the only person our community can bring out is the leader. Black Rabbit's identity was special, so naturally, it could not be used for publicity. Wu Ming and the other three were newcomers who had just joined the community, and they did not have the chance to show their strength. Even the news of them defeating the Water God was spread in an unreliable way. So, only Ren Russell, the leader, was left to publicize. Well, there's nothing bad about it. After all, you're the leader of the community, Ren. 16 Knights smiled gently. That's right. Just accept it. Wu Ming flipped through the pages while persuading. Since things had come to this, Ren could only nod. Speaking of which, little brother, what did you say to those people? I'm very curious. 16 Knights asked. It's nothing big. I just told them that no name can restore their community's freedom. But in return, I hope that those who did such things can turn themselves in early to atone for the children killed by Guard. After all, it was not something shameful, so Wu Ming said it casually. After all, even if they were forced, it could not hide the fact that they were Guard's accomplices. Although their crimes did not warrant death, they still had to accept the necessary punishment. You're really kind, little brother, 16 Knights Reversal said in a mocking and praising tone. Turning themselves in early and pleading guilty after being caught were two different concepts. The former would definitely be dealt with lightly. The ordinary laws of other worlds stipulated this, so the laws of the United States of America were not much different. It could be said that Wu Ming's actions were actually helping those people. It's just a suggestion. It's up to them whether they listen or not. Wu Ming said casually, his eyes still on the book in his hand. Of course, it was not that Wu Ming looked down on those people, but there were definitely not many who were willing to turn themselves in early. After all, this was also a gamble. What if no name lost after turning themselves in? Opportunities would not wait. If they could not seize the opportunity, it was not Wu Ming's problem. At this time, the door of the conference room was pushed open. Ah, is everyone here? The owner of the voice asked with some surprise. Chapter 582. Did something happen? Jiu Yuao asked Wu Ming and the others. Wu Ming raised his head and looked at the newcomers. It was Jiu-Yuao, Haruai Hiroyuki, and Kurorabi. Looking at the three's still damp hair, Wu Ming speculated that the three of them might have just finished bathing. When they passed by, they noticed the light and came in to take a look. "So you guys didn't sleep? I thought you guys were all asleep." Wu Ming put down the book in his hand when he saw everyone coincidentally gathered together. After dinner, Black Rabbit took us to the no-name bathhouse. "There's a place where we can take a bath. It took us some time," Haruhi Bikari said as he hugged the three-furred cat. There were still water droplets on his hair. Although it wasn't that he couldn't understand, Wu Ming still had the mentality of complaining about the girl taking so long to take a bath. But this also explained why Jiu Yuao and the others didn't know what happened. No Name's bathhouse was also underground, and the location of the entrance was quite hidden from outsiders. This was mentioned when Ren and Kurorabi brought Wu Ming and the others to visit the room. But if Jiu Yuao and Haruai Hiroyuki knew that they missed a good show, they would probably be angry. As for why Ren was disturbed by 16th Night's explosion and the other children weren't disturbed, it was because 16th Night obviously went easy on them and didn't use so much strength. Secondly, Ren's place was closest to the brown-clothed man and 16th Night. Otherwise, Ren wouldn't have been able to get dressed in such a short time. Ren's place was close to 16th Night and the brown-clothed man's place. It could only be said that it was a coincidence. I have to say, the bathhouse here is quite good. Jiu Yufei stretched her back lazily. Coupled with the clothes she was wearing, Jiu Yufei looked quite charming even though she hadn't fully developed yet. "This clothes suits you." Wu Ming looked at Jiu Yuao's clothes and commented. The clothes that Flying Bird was originally wearing were gone, replaced by a bright red princess dress that reached her ankles. "Thank you." Ji-Yun Flying Bird bowed to Wu Ming. "Well, you're welcome. It's just that the size doesn't fit." Hearing Wu Ming's words, Jiu Fei Niao immediately reacted. His face turned red as he covered his chest. Because the clothes were made with the body of a black rabbit, a healthy black rabbit naturally couldn't be the same size as a bird that hadn't developed much. "Pervert! Shut up." Jiao Fei Niao instinctively used his grace. As soon as Ji-Yun Flying Bird said that, Wu Ming felt as if he had been shackled. However, in an instant, those shackles were broken by Wu Ming. "Is this the effect of your grace? Using the spirit of speech to control?" Wu Ming pondered, feeling the state just now. "It doesn't work?" This was the first time Ji-Yun Flying Bird's ability failed. "It's not that it doesn't work. It's just that it's more difficult for you to control someone who is stronger than you." Wu Ming didn't mind Flying Bird using his grace on him. After all, he was the one who teased her first. "Just like me, your grace did have an effect on me. However, because I'm much stronger than you, the moment you try to control me, I broke free from your control," Wu Ming explained enthusiastically. However, that's also related to the user's lack of development. Hearing Wu Ming's words, Ji-Yun Flying Bird's expression darkened. "That can't be helped. I don't want to control others." Hearing this, Wu Ming's gaze wavered. Everyone, if there's nothing else, let's go to sleep. After all, we still have to compete with Forsgaro tomorrow." Black Rabbit quickly mediated. After all, tomorrow's grace competition was the first grace competition for No Name after the new members joined. Naturally, they had to take it seriously. Looking at the moon outside, it was indeed very late. Wu Ming agreed. "If you have anything to say, let's save it for tomorrow. You should know that staying up late isn't good for a girl's skin." This teasing sentence made Flying Bird, Yao, and Black Rabbit quickly return to their rooms. Wu Ming and Run greeted each other and returned to their room under 16 Night's teasing gaze. The next morning, Jiao Fei Niao, Kasuga Tribe's Yahajin Russell, accompanied by Wu Ming, 16 Night's Reverse, and Black Rabbit, walked towards the Forsgaro base. By the way, Flying Bird's clothes had already been adjusted by Black Rabbit. Because No Name was the challenger, the content and venue of the competition were decided by Forsgaro. This time, Forsgaro, as competition venue, was set in the residential area. There were 3 types of areas in the box court world. The stage area for competitions, the free area for business and entertainment, and the residential area for eating and living. This time, Forsgaro held the grace competition in their residential area. Wuming didn't have any doubts about this result. After all, it was better to play dirty in one's own territory. However, this didn't mean that Wuming wouldn't do anything. At this time, 16 Knights, who was walking at the back, started a conversation with Wuming, who was also walking at the back. By the way, you're really cruel, little brother. 16 Knights was referring to the incident where Wuming instigated the brown shirt men to turn themselves in last night. After all, they did make a mistake. It's not something that can be made up for by helping us fight against Forsgaro. Wuming shrugged his shoulders. While talking with 16 Knights, Wuming also controlled his mental strength to explore the community of Forsgaro. Wuming didn't think that the other party wouldn't think of other ways after their dirty trick failed. Wuming and 16 Knights weren't afraid of the other party's dirty tricks, but it was hard to say for Jyo Asuka, Haruhito Yayoi, and Rin, who were preparing to participate in this grace competition. After all, the three people's grace competitions weren't directly lethal. Therefore, Wuming prepared to use his mental strength to check the current situation of Forsgaro for everyone. Well, as long as you're happy. 16 Knights didn't pay attention to this matter. Anyway, even if they didn't turn themselves in after Forsgaro was defeated, the secret would naturally be exposed. At that time, as the ruler of the East District, Byakuya wouldn't ignore it. 16 Knights knew this, so he didn't care about those people. What are Mr. 16 Knights and Mr. Villo talking about? Black Rabbit noticed the conversation between Wuming and 16 Knights and asked curiously, "It's nothing. We were just discussing how to cook the rabbit to make it tastier." 16 Knights smiled at the Black Rabbit. How could Black Rabbit not know that he was teased by 16 Knights again? "Mr. 16 Knights, you big idiot," Black Rabbit said as he took out a paper fan and hit 16 Knights on the head. Although he didn't know why 16 Knights didn't say anything, Wuming didn't want to say anything about what happened last night. After all, it wasn't a big deal, so there was no need to take care of everything. At this time, Wuming's mental strength sensed that something was wrong. Something happened to Forsgaro. Chapter 583. After everyone heard Wuming's words, they hurriedly ran towards the Forsgaro's base. It wasn't that everyone was concerned about Forsgaro, it was just that Forsgaro's mishap happened at the wrong time. Although it was beneficial for one side to have an accident, Forsgaro had an accident right before the start of the gift match. This made it easy for people to think that Forsgaro was unscrupulous in order to win. Even though the bestowment competition would naturally be canceled and No Name would not be able to gain any benefits, it would still inevitably bring negative influence to No Name. From an outsider's point of view, this was how things were. The biggest community in the outer sect, 210-5380, had met with trouble on the eve of the bestowment competition with No Name, who had been attacked by the Demon King. It must have been a mere No Name who played a dirty trick. From an outsider's point of view, this was the truth of the matter. Once the outside world thought that No Name was a community that relied on underhanded means to survive, it would be terrible. It must be known that without a banner or a name, it would be very troublesome for No Name to rise to prominence. If this infamy was added to No Name, then No Name would really be unable to reverse the situation. Of course, this was all just guesswork. The future could not be predicted. What everyone needed to do now was to find out what happened to Forsgaro as soon as possible, because they were already very close to Forsgaro's base. After Wuming said that something happened to Forsgaro, everyone only needed to jog to reach Forsgaro's designated competition area. It was a manor that occupied a large area. The manor's door was tightly shut. Through the walls, they could see the lush trees growing in the manor. There was nothing out of the ordinary. However, this seemingly peaceful manor was filled with a deathly silence. This did not match the bestowment competition that was about to be held. Something is wrong. Black Rabbit was slightly afraid as he pulled back his rabbit ears. Without saying anything else, Wuming walked directly to the manor's main door. He reached out his hand and gently pushed the door open. "Wait a minute, Mr. Villo. We haven't confirmed the final personnel yet. The door to the gift competition venue can't be opened. However, Black Rabbit stopped halfway through its sentence. The gate of the manor was easily pushed open by Wooming, revealing a quiet forest. Wooming's footsteps did not stop as he directly walked in. Then, the three problem children followed Wooming's footsteps and walked through the door. It was open just like that, and other people were allowed to enter. Does that mean the gift competition has been canceled? Although 16 Knights didn't go to the library last night, he still learned a lot of information from Ren. The venue that was designated as the venue for the gift competition could not be forcibly entered unless the gift competition was canceled. Only then would one be allowed to enter. However, even if the gift competition was canceled, this was still the residential area of Orescaro. Let's not talk about the fact that people could enter this place at will. Even if the gift competition was canceled, there should still be guards in the residential area. But now, the entire forest was silent as if it was dead. There was not a single trace of human presence. What if the gift competition was cleared? Wooming suddenly said. This made everyone think for a moment. Even though we don't know the details of the match, we can tell that this place is a lush forest. We can guess that the match will be a blessing match to find something in the forest or kill an enemy. Wooming took 2 steps forward and arrived at the edge of the forest. If that's the case, the enemy can't be outside but inside. After all, Guard knew about the powerful abilities of Jiyuki Asuka and Haruhito Yayoi, so they definitely wouldn't use open means. And if it was really as Wooming guessed, Guard might have ambushed them secretly. If there was a powerful person who came here in advance and got rid of Fog Garo, then there would be such a quiet scene. That's what you're guessing, right, little brother? 16 Knights walked to Wooming's side with his hands on his head. But it's also possible that the powerful person hacked into Orescaro last night, and that's why it's like this now. After all, if Orescaro started the gift competition that only no name could participate, then the other party wouldn't be able to do anything. It had to be said that the Hakuto world was really a magical place. The power of the gift competition was spread throughout the entire Hakuto. Black Rabbit, I'll have to trouble you to obtain some information from the center of the box court. Ask if the bestowment competition has been held here. Wooming looked at Black Rabbit as he spoke. As a noble of the Hakuto, Black Rabbit's ears were connected to the Hakuto Center. This was also why Rabbit, a noble of the Hakuto, often acted as a referee. If a noble of the Hakuto favored either side as a referee, they would instantly explode and die. This also made the contestants and the organizers feel quite relieved. After all, if Rabbit favored one side as a referee, the consequences would be severe. She could also tell everyone that the referee had broken the rules, so why not? By the way, Black Rabbit was the referee for the gift competition between No Name and Orescaro today. But because of this, Wooming asked Black Rabbit to get information from the Hakuto Center. Although Black Rabbit couldn't access the Hakuto Center as easily as browsing the internet, he could still ask about the scheduled gift competition. Yes, Black Rabbit will do it now. With that said, Black Rabbit closed its eyes, its ears constantly moving. In just a few seconds, Black Rabbit opened his eyes. You're right, Mr. Vero. The bestowment contest that was supposed to take place here never happened. Since this was the case, Wooming and the others had already entered the scheduled competition venue, and no one from Orescaro's side had appeared. Perhaps Orescaro was really defeated. Could it be that a Demon King attacked Orescaro last night? Rin frowned and said with some worry. It couldn't be said that Rin's worries were groundless, because only a Demon King would dare to attack Orescaro, which was a legitimate community on the surface. It's hard to say at the moment. After all, crimes that have not been discovered are not illegal in the Hakuto. Wooming shook his head. They couldn't rule out the possibility that another community had attacked Orescaro at night and wanted to take the opportunity to frame No Name. It was still the same saying, crimes that have not been discovered are not crimes. Just like how guards secretly kidnapped other community members and used this as a threat to force the other community to block the flag of the gift competition. However, Wooming was more inclined to believe that a powerful person had attacked Orescaro. The reason was the extremely silent forest in front of him. It wasn't that Wu-Ming looked down on people, but in the outer door of 210-5380, there was no community that had such power. Otherwise, the largest community in the outer door of 210-5380 would not be Ereskero, but other communities. Of course, all of this had to exclude No Name at the moment. Take 16th Knights, who had a short fight with Wu-Ming, as an example. After reading the books about the combat power of the Hakata in No Name's underground library, Wu-Ming conservatively estimated that 16th Knights was in the lower level of the Hakata. Among the 6 and 7 digits, there was no one who could compete with him. Even among the 5 digits in the middle level, 16th Knights was considered one of the best. However, because Wu-Ming had not specifically fought with 16th Knights, it was difficult to determine which number 16th Knights belonged to. However, what was certain was that people like Wu-Ming and 16th Knights could completely eliminate a 7-digit community in one night. Of course, people like 16th Knights who were more violent would definitely not clean up the battlefield so cleanly. In short, Wu-Ming believed that this place was attacked by a powerful person. However, why would the other party attack Forsgaro the day before Forsgaro in No Name's gift match? Even if they wanted to seek revenge, it would be too much of a coincidence. Or rather, the other party's target is actually No Name. Wu-Ming said lightly as he closed his eyes. In an instant, everyone felt that something had passed through their bodies. Chapter 584. Everyone felt that their bodies were penetrated by something. It was the result of Wu-Ming's mental power being released without any concealment. Everyone also knew that Wu-Ming was using his mental power to detect something, so they didn't disturb Wu-Ming. Wu-Ming was naturally looking for the guy who attacked Forsgaro. Wu-Ming had an intuition that if the other party came for No Name, then at this moment, the other party must be monitoring the situation here. This quiet manner was the best protection, wasn't it? However, the other party probably didn't know that Wu-Ming was a radar that could scan a large area. In just an instant, Wu-Ming's mental power enveloped the entire manor, and a spiritual map appeared in Wu-Ming's heart. In the manor, there was only a bungalow in the center. Guard and what seemed to be guard subordinates were lying unconscious in the house. However, they didn't seem to be dead. It seems that the attacker wasn't a bad person. Wu-Ming thought, just knocking out guard and the others who had committed the most heinous crimes instead of killing them was already a very kind existence in Silent Wonder's eyes. At this moment, at the edge of Wu-Ming's perception, a shadow quickly rushed out of the manor. Found it! Wu-Ming suddenly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the shadow. Over there! As if receiving a signal, 16 Knights suddenly bent his body and then stomped on the ground with one foot. His whole body was like a cannonball that rushed in the direction Wu-Ming was looking at. The ground where 16th Knight had been was now covered in spiderweb-like cracks. This made Rin Russell, who had never seen 16 Knights explode, dumbfounded. There's a bungalow in this forest. Guard and the others are unconscious inside. You guys be careful and go take a look. I'll meet up with 16 Knights. After all, the bungalow in the forest was not difficult to find. Wu-Ming just gave a simple explanation. After Wu-Ming finished speaking, a black hole appeared in front of him. Wu-Ming suddenly plunged into the black hole. Immediately after, the black hole shrank and disappeared. Rin was dumbfounded as he watched the two of them leave in different but equally bizarre ways. Mr. 16 Knights and Mr. Villo, they are both very powerful people. Outside the manor, a black-purple ripple suddenly appeared on the path that the black shadow had to take to escape. The black figure did not have the slightest intention of stopping. Then, with a movement that was quite strange in the eyes of ordinary people, it changed direction without slowing down by 90 degrees and continued to flee. When an obstacle appeared in front of him, the black shadow did the same thing as before and immediately changed direction. However, now, you have nowhere to run. Wu-Ming's voice came from the beginning of the black ripple. Immediately after, Wu-Ming's figure walked out of the black portal. These silver chains were naturally the pseudo-heavenly lock, a fake created by Wu-Ming on the spot. After all, The real thing was basically used on Hercules, who was sunk by Wu-Ming in the American continent. Those black ripples were the portal that Wu-Ming had shrunk. Those openings were just to allow the pseudo-heavenly lock to connect with each other and form a cage to trap the enemy like now. Now, abilities such as the portal and create advanced item no longer required Wu-Ming to chant. He could release them with just a thought. This was also thanks to the development of Wu-Ming's mental power. The place that was detected by Wu-Ming's mental power also became a place that Wu-Ming had been in disguise, so the portal could be used normally. Wu-Ming looked at the black shadow in the cage. Just as he was about to say something, a voice interrupted Wu-Ming. Oh, am I late? 16 Knights also rushed over at this moment. After all, the distance was not far. Coupled with the speed of 16 Knights, it was not difficult to find this place in less than a minute. Although an incomparably silent forest would bring fear to intruders, if they became hunters, then the silent forest would become the best way for hunters to find prey. After all, among a lot of motionless things, the moving thing was the most conspicuous. Then, 16 Knights Reversal laughed, as if he was complaining. Little brother, you actually have such a convenient thing. How cunning. Obviously, the scene of Wu-Ming walking out of the portal was seen by 16 Knights who rushed over. It's all because you're too excited. Wu-Ming shook his head helplessly. He originally wanted to use the portal with 16 Knights, but as soon as Wu-Ming said found it, 16 Knights directly rushed in the direction that Wu-Ming was looking at. After all, this is a big shot who killed the suspected Demon King of Oresgaro. How could I give it to you? 16 Knights laughed wildly. However, 16 Knights looked at the black shadow that was trapped by Wu-Ming's unknown chain cage and smacked his lips unhappily. But since you came first, I won't fight with you this time. 16 Knights looked at the villa with an expression that said, you got a big deal, and also gave Wu-Ming a good luck, I'm looking forward to it gesture. This made Wu-Ming a little embarrassed. Not to mention whether the other party was the Demon King or not. They were still not sure whether the other party was an enemy or not. They might not even be able to fight. However, the necessary contact was necessary. Then, the person hiding in the shadows, you can come out now. Wu-Ming said as he looked at the mysterious black shadow shrouded in the pseudo-heavenly lock cage. As if giving up, the shadow gradually dispersed, revealing the person hidden in the shadows. It was a lowly with curly blonde hair that reached her waist with a large bow tied behind her head. She was wearing a red jacket, black underwear, and a long gray tie. She was wearing a white fabric that looked like shorts, a short skirt, and a jacket. There were also 4 black ribbons that extended from the fabric, fluttering on both sides of her calves. Gray and black striped pantyhose matched with short boots. This outfit made the lowly look very strange. Oh, I didn't expect it to be a blonde lowly. I have never fought with a lowly before. 16 Knights looked at Wu-Ming with a face of happiness. However, Wu-Ming really couldn't agree with 16 Knights' thinking. Shouldn't a normal person's first reaction when seeing a beautiful lowly would be to think that she was cute or something like that? Why did 16 Knights look like she wanted to fight with her? But looking at it from another perspective, 16 Knights' approach wasn't wrong. After all, the other party was also the big shot that finished Forsgaro in one night. No matter how weak Forsgaro was in the eyes of 16 Knights, this blonde lowly was an existence that could act as a demon king. Since you've revealed yourself, it means that you're willing to talk to us. Then, can you tell me who you are, Miss Vampire? Wu-Ming asked the blonde lowly, his ruby-like eyes looking at the blonde lowly's red eyes. The blonde lowly was obviously stunned, but she recovered in an instant. Oh, you know my background the first time we meet? You're really not bad, little brother. However, in the face of 16 Knights' teasing, Wu-Ming chose to ignore it. His eyes were still looking at the blonde lowly. My name is Letitia Decrea. I was once a companion of no name. The blonde lowly, or Letitia, directly stated her identity. This time, it was Wu-Ming's turn to be stunned. Wu-Ming really didn't think that the other party would be so honest and directly state her name. As for no name, being a companion, Wu-Ming chose to believe Letitia. After all, this kind of lie that could be easily exposed would not be used by anyone. So that's how it is. So that's why you attacked Forsgaro. The community that he used to be in that had declined was bullied by other strong communities. With his strength, he couldn't stand it and wanted to teach those communities a lesson. This made sense. However, Letitia shook her head. In fact, I originally wanted to use Forsgaro to test the strength of the new members of No Name. As she said this, Letitia's eyes revealed a trace of sadness and determination. This made Wuming, who was talking to Letitia, see some clues. It seems that this is also a person with a story. Chapter 585. Letitia gave Wuming the feeling that she was entrusting her child to him. It seemed like she was hiding something. Then, what made you give up on the idea of using Forsgaro and even defeated them with your own hands? Wuming had already begun to believe that Letitia was a former companion of No Name, because Wuming didn't think that her eyes were deceiving him. If she really had such superb acting skills, then Wuming was willing to admit defeat. Because I saw you. Letitia looked at Wuming as if she was looking at the hope of No Name. This made 16 Knights, who was on the side, narrow his eyes. Looking at Letitia's appearance, it seemed like she had seen Wuming before, or at least seen Wuming's strength. Although Wuming didn't have the impression of seeing Letitia before, Wuming wasn't surprised by Letitia's words. Letitia gave Wuming the impression that she was a fruit that had been hollowed out. She looked strong on the outside, but she didn't have much strength on the inside. In other words, Letitia used to be very strong, but now she had weakened for some unknown reason. No matter what the reason was, Wuming only needed to know that Letitia used to be very strong. Since that was the case, Letitia might have followed the former leader of No Name to excavate Wuming's body. Wuming guessed that it might be because Letitia was also present when No Name was excavating Wuming's body, and for some unknown reason, she had seen Wuming's strength. And now, after Wuming came to this world using his spiritual body, he didn't deliberately suppress his abilities, so Letitia might have seen some clues. Have you seen my body before? Wuming suddenly asked. Letitia nodded her head very naturally. Your body was in No Name's base, but 3 years ago, it was taken away by the Demon King who attacked No Name. Wuming, who had been to No Name, naturally knew about this. Then, why are you so sure that my body is the existence buried under your land? This was indeed a problem. After Wuming came to this world, other than the fact that he didn't restrain his aura and pressure at the beginning, he had basically kept it hidden, and his key abilities weren't exposed much. In the eyes of No Name, Wuming was just a powerful spirit with some special power that could freely travel between worlds. Although 16 Knights might have seen that Wuming wasn't simple, it was still just a guess. But after Wuming and Letitia's conversation, Wuming had confirmed his identity. An unknown life form with powerful strength that had yet to be revealed? Something like that. In any case, Wuming had already sensed 16th Knight's battle intent. You Letitia's Letitia, ses Letitia, is. Letitia's words reminded Wuming of what happened last night. Last night, in order to show off his strength, Wuming did reveal his pressure. But it seemed that this fleeting aura was caught by Letitia. Your aura is exactly the same as your body's aura, incomparably powerful. Letitia, who had followed the leader of the community to excavate Wuming's body, recognized the powerful aura at a glance. Wuming smiled helplessly. It was because Letitia recognized that this new member was the spiritual body of a powerful being that had once been buried under No Name. Letitia decisively gave up on using Forsgaro to test the new member and even taught Forsgaro a lesson. This led to the previous situation. He didn't expect this vampire girl to be so protective. Then, Wuming had a wicked thought. Then, looking at this coincidence, I'll give you the right to choose. Wuming walked to the front of the cage formed by the pseudo-heavenly lock. His footsteps did not stop. Like a ghost, he directly passed through the pseudo-heavenly lock and walked in front of Letitia. Then, Wuming, with a serious face, used his red eyes to stare at Letitia's eyes, which were the same color as his own, and said word by word, "Do you want me to protect No Name, or do you want me to pull you back from hell?" Letitia was not surprised that Wu Ming knew her situation was not good. Maybe in her opinion, someone of Wu Ming's level should know everything. But Wu Ming was just trying to get information out of her. I choose to let you protect, no name. Letitia said her thoughts without hesitation. Even 3 years ago, Letitia could not recognize what kind of existence Wu Ming's original body was buried under her community. Now that her strength was greatly reduced, she was even more unable to recognize it. But Letitia knew one thing, and that was if no name was protected by such a big shot, not to mention getting back the previous name and flag. No name could even go further. Wu Ming closed his eyes when he heard the answer that he expected. Then, Wu Ming smiled and put his hand on Letitia's small head. You're really a greedy little guy. Even when Wu Ming stroked her head, Letitia's face did not move at all. But Letitia's slightly red cheeks showed that her heart was not calm. So, you agree? Letitia raised her head that was slightly lowered because of Wu Ming's touch. But Wu Ming shook his head. Unfortunately, I can't protect no name like you said. First of all, Wu Ming's main mission in this world was to find his original body. He only joined no name because he was touched by Black Rabbit's sentiments of protecting his home and wanted to help them. It could be said that if he did not join no name, Wu Ming could still find his original body in this world. However, after joining no name, he obtained information about his original body first. This was something that Wu Ming had to thank no name. And because Wu Ming's original body was corroded by the black origin mud, Wu Ming temporarily could not remove his spiritual body and return to his original body. If he forcefully removed his spiritual body, then Wu Ming would only return to the backup body in the origin. Therefore, Wu Ming had to take one step at a time to find his original body. Secondly, Wu Ming could not stay in this world forever. Although Gidia was injured, it was still a hidden threat. But fortunately, if Gadatsi used the blade of salvation made by the Holy Grail to summon Wu Ming would also be able to sense it. When the time came, Wu Ming could use the Holy Grail version of the blade of salvation as a medium to create a spirit base. Now, Wu Ming could easily control multiple bodies with one mind. Even if it was cross-world control, it was the same. At most, there would be a slight delay in the consciousness of both sides. But Letitia panicked when she heard Wu Ming's rejection. Please promise me. I'll do anything you want me to. To be honest, although Letitia was not very clear about the 3 newcomers other than Wu Ming, the 3 of them definitely could not be compared to No Name from 3 years ago. As a former Demon King who was defeated and absorbed into the former No Name, Letitia was very clear about how powerful this community was in the past. However, such a powerful community was still attacked by the Demon King, and in the end became the current No Name. If the enemy who attacked No Name 3 years ago came again, the 3 newcomers would not be able to resist at all. In Letitia's opinion, only Wu Ming had the ability to protect the current No Name. During the confrontation with the Demon King, Letitia remembered that when Wu Ming's original body fought against the Demon King, the power produced even affected the Demon King's gift competition. But because Wu Ming's original body was always asleep, Letitia's community ended up becoming No Name. However, due to the influence of the previous battle, the enemies were more interested in the treasures hidden in this land. If it weren't for the fact that Letitia still remembered the enemy's panicked look, she would have thought that they were here because of Wu Ming's main body. In short, Letitia believed that as the soul of the powerful existence under the land, Wu Ming had the ability to protect No Name. Chapter 586. As you can see, I am the soul, and that is the body. Because I fought with a powerful enemy, the two were separated, and the body was lost in this world. Wu Ming patiently explained to Letitia, my first task is to find my body and pursue that enemy. In other words, I can't stay in No Name for long, so I can't protect No Name according to your request. However, Wu Ming's words had a big impact on Letitia. Wu Ming fought with an enemy outside the world, and his body was lost in the box court. This was the feeling of a super powerhouse. In reverse 16 knights, who chose to be a listener, looked at Wu Ming with a burning gaze. Don't get me wrong, it was a gaze full of fighting intent. But being stared at by a man with a burning gaze made Wu Ming quite uncomfortable. However, if it's at the cost of yourself, I can fulfill your wish. Directly ignoring Reverse 16 Knight's gaze, Wu Ming whispered in Letitia's ear like a demon. Wu Ming was not idle in the underground library of No Name yesterday. Wu Ming found something related to vampires. The sky in each area of the box court had a layer of curtain that could allow creatures unable to live under the sun to live normally, and the first such creature to bear the brunt was vampires. Therefore, vampires who came to the box court began to spontaneously maintain the stability of the box court. Therefore, vampires in a box court were called the Knights of the Box Court. Wu Ming could see that Letitia's strength was not weak, but for some reason, she lost her power. If Letitia regained her strength, Wu Ming could enhance Letitia's strength, and protect No Name would not be a problem. As for the enemies that Letitia was worried about, Wu Ming naturally thought of them. However, those who dared to touch the body of the Root Dragon, whether they could withstand the wrath of the Root Dragon and survive, was still a question. I understand. Letitia was stunned. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and nodded with a red face. However, Wu Ming saw all of this, and Wu Ming was willing to bet that Letitia must have misunderstood. Oh, little bro, you finally can't help but make a move on this golden-haired lowly. 16 Knights Reverse fanned the flames as he saw that Lo Huai was not meddling in other people's business. This guy definitely understood that what Wu Ming said was completely different from what Letitia was thinking. If you have nothing better to do, go and meet up with Black Rabbit and the others. You should be satisfied after hearing so many things that others don't know. Wu Ming waved his hand at Reverse 16 Knights in disdain. No problem. Then, as the price, if you have the chance, you must have a good fight with me. 16 Knights didn't care whether Wu Ming agreed or not. He laughed wildly and ran away. This guy actually didn't cause any trouble this time. Wu Ming looked at 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights who disappeared into the woods in surprise. Although Wu Ming had just met 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights, Wu Ming thought that he already knew 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights very well. He was a proper problem child. However, although 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights was a problem child, he followed Wu Ming's wishes this time. He didn't get ready to fight with Wu Ming after hearing the conversation between Wu Ming and Letitia. He also listened to Wu Ming's words and went to meet up with Black Rabbit and the others. Although 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights unilaterally made an agreement with Wu Ming, this was already very good. Then, do you like this body type or the body type of an adult? I can change into it, Letitia said as she started to take off her clothes with a red face. Wait a moment. Wu Ming looked helpless. Wu Ming quickly put his hand on Letitia's half-taken-off red jacket. However, at this moment, in Wu Ming's perception, a person came here at an extremely fast speed. Mr. Villo, Mr. 16 Knights Reverse 16 Knights, said you asked me to come over. Black Rabbit bounced over and said naturally. However, Black Rabbit noticed Letitia, who was beside Wu Ming. Sigh, Senior Letitia, why are you here? Then, Black Rabbit suddenly realized that Wu Ming in Letitia's current state was a bit off. Wu Ming's hand was placed on Letitia's half-taken-off red jacket. Letitia's face blushed as if she wanted to reject it. Black Rabbit, who had been instilled with evil thoughts by White Yiksha, immediately understood at this moment. You too. Don't tell me. Then, Black Rabbit suddenly jumped away with a red face. At the same time, Black Rabbit's shy shouts echoed throughout the manor. After helping Letitia put on the red jacket, Wu Ming had an expression of admitting defeat. I knew 16 Knights wouldn't be that obedient. A moment later, in the living room of No Name's base, Black Rabbit and Letitia sat on the bench in the middle. Wu Ming and Jiu Yuanfei sat on the side facing each other. In other words, Mr. Villo and Senior Letitia don't have the kind of relationship that Black Rabbit thought. Is this just a misunderstanding? Black Rabbit, who sat beside Letitia, sighed. After all this time, she was the one who got it wrong. Letitia's face was also red, and she didn't say anything. After all, She was the one who got it wrong in the beginning. So, Miss Jiu Yunfei, can you take back that perverted gaze? Wu Ming looked at Jiu Yunfei, who sat across from him helplessly. Oomph. Although it was a misunderstanding, for Jiu Yunfei, who came from the world just after World War II, Wu Ming and Letitia's interaction about clothes was rude enough. Wu Ming could only shrug his shoulders helplessly. When Black Rabbit's scream resounded in the manor, the rest of No Name began to rush over. Wu Ming also took advantage of this time to explain to Letitia. This caused Letitia's face to turn red once again. When the members of No Name rushed over, only Black Rabbit's face was flushed red. Wu Ming and Letitia, on the other hand, had calm expressions. However, Letitia's cheeks were still slightly rosy. Rinha Haruai and Jiu Yunfei didn't understand the situation, but Black Rabbit and 16 Knights knew what happened. It should be that the mastermind behind the scenes, 16 Knights, must know what happened. I say, little brother, we didn't really make a move on this blonde lowly, did you? This was what 16 Knights, who was still watching the fun and making a big deal out of it, said. This made Rinha Haruai and Jiu Yunfei very interested. However, because the follow-up matters of Forsgaro needed to be dealt with by White Yiksha, Rinha Haruai and 16 Knights went to deal with it. Jiu Yunfei, Black Rabbit, Letitia, and Wu Ming returned to No Name's base. Then, Wu Ming told Jiu Yunfei and Black Rabbit what happened. In addition to Letitia's testimony, Jiu Yunfei and Black Rabbit didn't have any misunderstandings. On the other hand, Letitia, who was Wu Ming's witness, blushed. However, that was because Letitia had misunderstood Wu Ming's meaning. But at this moment, Black Rabbit, who was hugging Letitia, was very happy. To think that you're Letitia's senpai again, Black Rabbit really missed you. Looking at Black Rabbit, who was like a child, Letitia's heart returned to 3 years ago. You've matured a lot, Black Rabbit. After all, in the past 3 years, the community relied on Rinha and Black Rabbit's meager income to barely survive. How could she not mature? Of course, when Letitia said matured, she was hinting at Black Rabbit's unhappiness by constantly squeezing her own fat in front of her chest. But after thinking about Wu Ming's suggestion, Letitia's face showed a trace of sadness. Although Villo-sama's suggestion is good, but right now, I have no choice. Letitia's words made Black Rabbit stunned. Then she had a helpless expression. Black Rabbit, do you know some recent news about Letitia? Wu Ming asked. Black Rabbit nodded. According to the recent news, Letitia's senpai will be given out as the prize of the gift competition. Then it's as we wish. As long as we participate in the gift competition and win, it'll be fine. Jiu Yunfei said elegantly and calmly, as if she had already won. But Wu Ming didn't think that it would be so simple. I'm afraid this method won't work. Along with this sentence, the room door was pushed open. Rinha, 16 Knights, and Kasuga Hiroyuki, who were responsible for dealing with the aftermath of Forsgaro, returned. Chapter 587. Did something happen to Letitia's gift competition? Wu Ming looked at 16 Knights who spoke before. 16 Knights put her hands in her pockets and walked to a single chair. She sat down and smiled casually. Let's leave the details to the little guy. Rin nodded as he found an empty single chair and sat down. Haruai Hiroyuki walked over to Black Rabbit and Letitia and sat down. In the beginning, Haruai Hiroyuki also knew Letitia's identity in the manor, so he didn't have any doubts. Then, Rin began to explain about Letitia. Let's talk about the Forsgaro first. According to the order of events, Rin began to explain. We found evidence in the Forsgaro's territory. After Lord Byakuya saw the evidence, he was very angry at Guard's actions and said that he would severely punish Forsgaro. Then, Haruai Hiroyuki added, according to Byakuya, Guard's spirit will be removed and sold as food. It's his own fault. It had to be said that this result was really satisfying. The spirit mentioned here was actually similar to the divine spark. It was a tool that could increase the level of one's own species. However, compared to the divine spark, the spirit was not so exaggerated. It was only a partial increase. It was similar to the two definitions of the enhanced version and the degraded version. Then, we asked Byakuya about Letitia's matter. Although no name did have its name, flag, and companions taken by the Demon King, Ren and Black Rabbit still tried very hard to get them back, just like Letitia. In fact, Ren and Black Rabbit already knew Letitia's whereabouts. For some reason, Letitia ended up in a community under the banner of this and yes. She was also taken out as a prize in the recent gift competition and placed on the table. Then, Ren looked at Letitia with some guilt. Black Rabbit, who was sitting next to Letitia, also lowered her head. After all, her former companions were now used as a prize in the gift competition, but she couldn't do anything about it. That kind of guilt and pain was not something that others could understand. Black Rabbit and Ron, you two don't have to feel guilty. After all, there's nothing we can do about it. Letitia smiled and comforted the two. However, after some thought, the Black Rabbit revealed a smile again. But now that we have a new companion, we will definitely be able to win Senior Letitia back in this gift competition. It's not that simple, Black Rabbit. If it was that simple, Letitia wouldn't have talked to Wooming like she was entrusting him to an orphan. 16th Knights wouldn't have said no to Ancient Flying Bird's method, and Ren wouldn't have looked so miserable since he came in. All of this proved that there was a problem with Letitia's gift contest. Then, Wooming's words were like a bucket of cold water splashed on the Black Rabbit's head. If my guess is correct, the community that took Letitia out as the prize for the bestowment competition has made a decision. Even if it means tarnishing their own community's reputation, they have to forcefully retract their decision to use Letitia as the prize. This sentence caused Black Rabbit's pupils to shrink. How can that be? The community's reputation is extremely important, Black Rabbit said in disbelief. In this world, the reason why the community's name and flag were so important was because these two were the community's signboard. If the shop's signboard was broken, then the shop would be in a slump. Wooming saw this in the underground library. After the bestowment competition was announced, the content could not be changed at will, including the prize, unless it was a special situation that everyone agreed on, or the organizer was thick-skinned and forcefully repented. However, if that was the case, the community's reputation would be tarnished. No community was willing to cooperate with a community that didn't keep its word. This was especially reflected in this box world. Ren's next words also proved that Wooming was right. Black Rabbit, Mr. Villo is right. According to Lord White Yiksha, the other party is willing to tarnish their own community's reputation to take back Letitia. Ren's face was gloomy. Before, they didn't have the power to save their companion. Now that they had the power, they couldn't save their companion. They obtained hope in despair, but before they could enjoy the joy of hope, they fell into despair once again. Although it wasn't that serious, Ren's heart was currently suffering from the pain of such a strong difference. This was too heavy for an 11-year-old youth who took on the role of a leader. Then what's the reason? The other party has to have a reason to take back Letitia. It couldn't be that the other party suddenly said that they didn't want to take Letitia as a prize and then took her back. If the other party really spoke like a child, who knew how angry by Yasha, the leader of Thousand Yes, would be, the bestowment competition organized by the community was like a country holding a conference. Then, when all the other countries were present, the other party suddenly said that they were canceling. Fortunately, the other contestants were from the lower levels of the box, or else the community they belonged to would definitely find trouble with this community. I heard from Lord White Yiksha that someone from outside the box offered a high price to buy this blonde lowly. 16th Knights spread out his hands. What? Outside the box, Senior Letitia is a vampire. If she's sold outside the box, she won't be able to survive under the sun. A2 stood up excitedly. Although the box was also the name of this world, in reality, the box was just a large city that covered almost the entire world. As long as there was an area with a curtain like a shed, it was the box. Since that was the case, the area that wasn't covered by the curtain was the area outside the box. Everyone knew that vampires were afraid of the sun. The vampires in the box world were also what normal people thought. Moreover, As a purebred vampire, Letitia was even more afraid of the sun. In short, if Letitia was sold outside the box, without the protection of the box's curtain, then Letitia would be doomed. If an analogy had to be made, Letitia outside the box, even if she didn't die, she would lose a layer of skin, and it would be the kind that would keep shedding. At that time, perhaps death would become a relief. Letitia silently pulled on Hey-Two's arm, indicating for Hey-Two to calm down. As expected, in the face of benefits, the other party directly chose to sacrifice the community's reputation. The leader of this community wouldn't be some rich second-generation character, right? Wuming ridiculed rather unhappily. Letitia, you actually already knew about this, right? Wuming looked at Letitia. I indeed knew before leaving that cage. Letitia seemed to have accepted her fate as she nodded expressionlessly. It was because Letitia knew that she was about to be sold that she sacrificed a seemingly large price in exchange for the right to temporarily move before leaving the box. It was all to see the result of no name. The people here weren't idiots. If she didn't pay a price as an item, how could Letitia be allowed to move freely? It was also because Letitia knew that she was about to be sold that she didn't feel at ease with no name and wanted to test the newcomer. It was also because Letitia knew that she was about to be sold, and when she realized that Wuming was an extremely powerful existence, Letitia racked her brains to ask Wuming for help. It was also because Letitia knew that she was about to be sold, and when she misunderstood Wuming's words of using herself as the price, Letitia unhesitatingly prepared to give herself to Wuming. Everything was for this once home, a home that she would never see again. It could be said that Letitia was simply like an idiot. For this home, she practically gave up everything. However, a lot of people often like this kind of idiot. Then, do you want to consider my proposal? Wuming very calmly looked at Letitia. Two pairs of red eyes looked at each other, just like when they first met. Chapter 588. However, Wuming's words confused everyone present. As the person involved, Letitia understood what Wuming meant. After all, Wuming had already told her what he meant. But even so, Letitia still shook her head helplessly. But, Master Villo, I'll be sold out of the box soon. Moreover, I've also lost my divinity. I really can't become the guardian of no name like you said. What? Senior Letitia, you've lost your divinity? After hearing Letitia's words, Black Rabbit was shocked, and his hair slightly changed color. Yes, that's right. I used my divinity as the price in exchange for a period of time where I can move freely. After all, as an item, the only price that Letitia could pay was her most precious thing, her divinity, which was worth this price. And because of this, Letitia's strength was greatly reduced. Wuming estimated that Letitia's current strength was probably less than 1/10 of her original strength. Although Wuming still didn't understand the division of strength in the box, according to Wuming's estimation, Letitia's current strength had fallen to the bottom of the 5-digit range, close to the 6-digit range. Senior Letitia, realizing the price that Letitia paid, Black Rabbit's eyes began to moisten and his voice began to choke. It had to be said that the price was a bit too high. However, Wuming still asked Letitia. Putting aside the current disadvantages, Letitia, let me ask you, do you accept my proposal? I accept. Letitia nodded. Although she didn't understand Wuming's meaning, she could only honestly say her true thoughts at this moment. Wuming smiled, and 16 knights who saw through Wuming's thoughts also smiled. Then everyone, let's go negotiate with the other party. Knight 210-5380 Outer Gate, 1000 Yes Branch. White Yiksha used a paper fan to cover the lower half of his face and looked with interest at Wuming, 16 Knights, Black Rabbit, and the leader of the community, Ren, sitting in front of him. It's really rare to visit at this time. Do you and No Name have something to ask of us? Although it was a question, White Yiksha, who asked it in a declarative tone, undoubtedly knew the thoughts of No Name. Let's get straight to the point, White Yiksha. Can you help us contact the leader of the community where Letitia is currently at? Wuming said bluntly. This made Rin tremble in fear. After all, the other party was the star spirit of Taiyang and Bai Yi, the current ruler of the hierarchy, White Yiksha. Shouldn't he be more polite when speaking? However, White Yiksha was not a person who would stick to trifles. He did not mind Wu Ming's words. To be honest, I don't want to see the guy who violated the agreement and brought shame to Thao's and Yes. From the looks of it, White Yiksha also knew that the other party had canceled the gift competition with Letitia as the prize. However, Wu Ming wasn't surprised by White Yiksha's reaction. No matter what, the other party was still a community under the banner of Thao's and Yes. Just the fact that they canceled the gift competition because they wanted to take back the prize made Thao's and Yes feel a lot of shame. After all, even if it was the other party's responsibility, the other party was still a community under the banner of Thao's and Yes. It was also because of this that White Yiksha had a disgusted expression. But since Black Rabbit is here, I'll kindly tell you. White Yiksha stared at Black Rabbit's full chest and smiled slyly. This made Black Rabbit hug her chest uncomfortably. However, Wu Ming once again realized that finding White Yiksha with Black Rabbit was as useful as getting a pass. I don't know when you found out about it. I found out this morning. White Yiksha began to explain. The community that held the ownership of Letitia was called Perseus. It was a mid-level, 5-digit community. The leader of the community was Luo's Perseus. According to White Yiksha, he was a vulgar hedonist with a rough personality. Moreover, according to White Yiksha, the other party had been coveting the aristocrats of the box court for a long time, but never had the chance. Ahem, please get to the point, Lord White Yiksha. Wu Ming coughed and slightly emphasized the word Lord. Ahem. In short, the other party's leader came to me today and said that he wanted to cancel the gift competition with Letitia. This made me angry for a while. It had to be said that White Yiksha was really responsible. As a cadre of Thao's and Yes, White Yiksha was furious that Perseus had damaged Thao's and Yes' reputation. However, White Yiksha's anger was of no use. Perseus was willing to pay double the compensation and used some special methods to make the scheduled contestants give up the competition. Although these methods were indeed special, in a situation where it wasn't a gift competition and there was no evidence, even White Yiksha, a leader of the hierarchy, couldn't do anything about it. The box court world was extremely free, but in some ways, it also had unparalleled restrictions. In this box court world, sometimes legal procedures were more useful than anything else. After all, the box court system was an invincible existence. In the box court world, one had to follow the box court game to live. This was set by all the gods and Buddhas who first created the box court. No one could change it. Breaking the contract and canceling the gift competition only required the payment of the penalty and the agreement of the scheduled contestants. Of course, there was also the invisible damage to the community's reputation. But the other party didn't make any contact with us. Rin frowned. Although Wu Ming, 16 Knights, and the other two didn't join No Name when they signed up for the competition, even if No Name wasn't strong enough, they still had to try. Letitia was worried about No Name, and everyone in No Name was also worried about Letitia. Even if they knew they would fail, even if they weren't strong enough, No Name would definitely participate in this gift competition. Because in No Name, as view, this wasn't a normal gift competition, but a battle to take back the only partner they had seen in 3 years. The reason why Black Rabbit summoned 16 Knights and the others at this time was also to replenish their combat power. But in the end, who would have thought that the other party would cancel the gift competition without the consent of all the scheduled contestants? After hearing Ren's words, White Yiksha had an I knew it expression. I thought so too. Let's not talk about the fact that it's impossible for Luos to contact you. Even if he did contact you and asked you to give up, you would never give up. Only when it came to their companions, No Name would never give up. But I think that Luos probably thought that No Name didn't need to be notified and made the decision on his own. Wu Ming said without thinking. But no one refuted this sentence. After all, although it was cruel, No Name without a name was indeed often looked down upon by other communities. Then, based on this point, White Yiksha, can you let the other party come over for a discussion? 16 Knights asked. We're begging you, Lord White Yiksha. Please help us. Black Rabbit also had a pleading attitude. Please. Ren also bowed to White Yiksha. At this time, White Yiksha smiled and revealed an expression that said, I've been waiting for you for a long time. We already guessed your request. When you first arrived here, we notified Luos. Now he should be here. At this time, a frivolous man's voice entered everyone's ears. Oh, isn't this you too? It really felt like speaking of the devil. A young man with gold and black hair, a collar around his neck, and boots walked in. He looked like a rich second-generation young master. This guy should be Luos. Everyone looked at the rich second-generation young master who walked in and developed feelings of disgust. Even Wu Ming had to admit that this guy was an annoying existence. It was as if he had a taunting aura around him. As expected, there is you Tuesday otherwise. My meaningless journey would have been wasted, Luos said casually. He said it as if Black Rabbit was already in his bag. All right, Luos. Regarding the matter of you canceling the gift competition without the consent of No Name, we have to start the discussion. Please show some of the temperament a leader should have. Huh? Discussion? What kind of joke are you making? If it wasn't for you two, why would I come here to discuss with a mere No Name? Luos looked at Wu Ming and the others mockingly, then complained to White Yiksha. However, he did not notice the coldness that flashed across Wu Ming's eyes. Chapter 589. Hey, you guys want that vampire, right? I'm very reasonable. Just give me Moon Rabbit in exchange. Luos had an expression that said, I'm very tolerant. You guys better be sensible. Immediately after, Luos looked at Black Rabbit with a lecherous expression. Please allow me to refuse. Black Rabbit covered her exposed skin with her hands and had an expression that said she would rather die than submit. You're really despicable. Black Rabbit is our No Name's exclusive bunny girl. No one else has the right to have her. 16 Knights had an expression of righteous indignation. That's right, Black Rabbit's No Name exclusive bunny, no? Wait a minute. Black Rabbit isn't a bunny girl. Black Rabbit, who had been abducted, repeated 16th Knight's words. Halfway through, it reacted and refuted 16th Knight. Mr. 16 Knights is a big idiot. As she spoke, Black Rabbit took out a paper fan and hit 16 Knight's head. However, Luos was amused by this. Ha ha ha. I can only say that as expected of No Name. If you guys act as comedians, I might reward the two of you. Luos looked at Wu Ming and the others as if they were clowns. Then I really have to thank you. 16 Knights wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and responded. Enough fooling around. Wu Ming interrupted Luos and 16 Knights. Mr. Luos, right? I would like to ask, who wants to buy Letitia? If possible, please tell me the price. Wu Ming looked at Luos with a serious and kind tone. That won't do. Luos shrugged his shoulders with an arrogant and helpless look. I have to protect the privacy of my customers. How can I casually reveal my customers' information? However, the words protect the privacy of my customers did not appear on Luos, who didn't keep his words. Instead, it was very ironic. However, from Wu Ming's point of view, Luos said this on purpose. Oh, to put it simply, you think that No Name is easy to bully, so you're deliberately making things difficult for us. Wu Ming said bluntly. Even so, Wu Ming's tone was still very kind. Coupled with this sentence, it gave people the feeling that he was admitting defeat. Mr. Villo, Rinha, and Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming in surprise. Of course, they were not surprised by Wu Ming's cowardice, but by Wu Ming's straightforward words. After all, this discussion was only a discussion in name. Was it really appropriate to speak the truth so bluntly? Although this kind of feeling of admitting defeat was also quite disturbing. When Rinhi Black Rabbit opened his mouth to speak, 16 Knights stretched out his hand and blocked Rinhi Black Rabbit, indicating that the two should not speak. However, 16 Knights didn't admit defeat. He knew that Wu Ming already had a plan. Don't be fooled by 16 Knights and lose happy conversation before, but the cold glint in 16 Knights' eyes proved his inner thoughts. Don't be fooled by rebellious 16 Knights' usual sloppy appearance. Rebellious 16 Knights had deep feelings for this new home of No Name. Wu Ming once asked 16 Knights why he joined No Name. "I won't let go of the chance to fight with Lord Demon King. I'm someone who will be moved by the truth." That was what 16 Knights told Wu Ming at the time. Because it was exciting to fight with the Demon King, he was moved and joined No Name. But from Wu Ming's point of view, rebellious 16 Knights joined No Name not only because he could fight with the Demon King, but also because he was moved by the truth. For the sake of No Name, Black Rabbit had been constantly running around for the past 3 years, trying his best to maintain No Name. He even sold his body to White Yiksha. Don't think too much. It was just that White Yiksha said that if Black Rabbit wore the clothes she provided, Black Rabbit's reward as a referee would increase. Ren also took on the responsibility of a community leader at the age of 11, when he should have grown up under the protection of his parents, for the sake of No Name. Rebellious 16 Knights also faced this feeling of being moved by the truth. Therefore, Rebellious 16 Knights was a faked Sundara, cough cough. In short, if it involved the issue of companions, whoever dared to touch his companions, he would make that person pay the price, the kind that would be worse than death. On this point, Wu Ming was the same. "Ah, that's right, it's just No Name. Even if you're the scheduled participants, I don't need to ask for your consent to cancel the gift competition, because you are really too insignificant," Luo said arrogantly, ignoring White Yiksha's impatient gaze. "Pay attention to your words, kid. Even if No Name is a community without a name, the other party is still a community. It's not reasonable for you to cancel the gift competition without the consent of all the communities. That's why I came to meet with No Name to discuss." Luo's acted like he had taken advantage of Renbachian. "Didn't I say that as long as it's you two, No Name will do without participating in the gift competition and directly get the prize?" Then Luo's looked at Black Rabbit. "And you too is an existence that is willing to sacrifice herself for others. Isn't this a very good suggestion?" When Luo's said this, Black Rabbit began to hesitate. Luo's was right. You two had the nature of sacrificing herself for others. It could be seen from the fact that Black Rabbit had been constantly working for No Name for the past 3 years. Although No Name had once helped Black Rabbit, what was more important was the dedication of the U2 clan. Just as Luo's looked at Black Rabbit lecherously and Black Rabbit began to hesitate, Wu Ming suddenly opened his mouth. And it was a violent tone that was the complete opposite of the kind tone from before. "It's about time to shut up, Lord Perseus' second-generation ancestor." Wu Ming, who raised his voice by a few decibels, made Luo's tremble and jump in fright. Rinna Black Rabbit was also shocked, but the focus of everyone's attention was not on Rinna Black Rabbit, but on Luo's and Wu Ming. When White Yiksha saw that Luo's was frightened, he began to look at Luo's as if he was a piece of trash. Feeling White Yiksha's gaze, Luo's felt embarrassed. However, White Yiksha was an existence that he could not afford to offend, so he could only vent his anger on No Name, who provoked him and could afford to provoke him. "It's just No Name. Do you think you're the only ones with a loud voice?" Luo's shouted angrily. I'm sorry for being loud. I just didn't expect the leader of Perseus to be so cowardly." Wu Ming apologized with a mocking expression. Wu Ming's words and his mocking status made Luo's angry. However, Luo smiled. "I know. You're purposely provoking me so that I can't continue with the gift competition." Then, Luo's continued to speak arrogantly. "I've already seen through your plan. No Name! ! But Wu Ming also laughed. "Are you really the descendant of that hero? You self-righteous idiot." Chapter 590. What do you mean?" Luo's frowned and looked at Wu Ming. Although Luo's was a rich second generation who only cared about eating, drinking, and having fun, he was still very proud of his bloodline. Wu Ming's words caused Luo's anger to increase by another notch. "Isn't this very obvious?" Wu Ming purposely put on a very helpless face. "Why would you think that if I angered you, I would let you continue with the bestowment competition? These two are completely unrelated. I'm just telling the truth. You were really shocked just now, weren't you? Wu Ming's words made Luo's unable to refute. He was indeed shocked. This point was seen by everyone present, including White Yiksha, who had always looked down on Luo's. Furthermore, my suspicions of whether you are the descendant of the hero Perseus were not wrong. Luo's community name was Perseus, which was Perseus, the hero who killed the snake-haired demon Medusa. Since he dared to use Perseus as his name, then the first leader of this community should be that hero. In the box courtyard world, it was common for heroes in myths and legends to come to the box courtyard. After many heroes completed their deeds, they would be summoned to the box courtyard. This was what Wu Ming saw when he was reading the history books of the box courtyard in the underground library of No Name. After Perseus died, he ascended to the immortal constellation mountain. At the same time, he was summoned to the box courtyard and started his story again. This was considered the creation of the community Perseus. Therefore, every generation of leaders of Perseus was the direct descendant of Perseus. Therefore, Wu Ming's suspicions towards Luo's should not be suspected of Luo's. But who asked Luo's to be a rich second generation? He did not have the demeanor of his ancestor at all. I heard that Perseus is a 5-digit community, but you want to move to a 6-digit community. You are really a rich second generation who ruined your ancestors' business. Then, Wu Ming continued to taunt, or rather, insult. A spoiled brat like you who doesn't think about improving himself and only knows how to eat, drink, and play. I'm afraid you've already used up all the treasures left behind by Perseus. Wu Ming wasn't wrong. Perseus left behind many treasures for Perseus, but when it reached Luo's generation, other than the scythe sword, invisibility helmet, flying boots, and other incomparably important treasures of Perseus, the other treasures were basically consumed by Luo's. How was it consumed? Of course, it was for Luo's to enjoy himself. This was also why Luo's wanted to move the Perseus from the 5-digit middle tier to the 6-digit lower tier, because they no longer had the qualifications and strength to stay in the middle class. No Name is giving you face by participating in your gift competition. It's fine if you have a grateful look, but who are you trying to show your arrogance to? I have seen Perseus before. Although he also has an annoying look compared to you, he's still far behind. Ignoring everyone's surprise at Wu Ming saying that he had seen Perseus before, Wu Ming acted as if he had discovered something. Ayaya, you see, I'm really rude. Doesn't this mean that you are really the descendant of the hero Perseus? That's great. At least you are not a bastard that came out of nowhere. Otherwise, I would really have to mourn for Perseus. Everyone was dumbfounded. Who would have thought that Wu Ming, who was considered steady among the problematic children of 16 Knights, would be so special? However, Wu Ming didn't stop. But compared to this, isn't it more proof that you are the descendant of Perseus? You have ruined this bloodline. As expected, you have to be careful. I think you should directly move the community to 7 digits. Otherwise, you will be in trouble if you provoke someone you shouldn't. All right. Wu Ming acted as if he had good intentions. Our 210-5380 outer door is quite spacious. Do you want to squeeze in with us? Seeing that you are Perseus, we, No Name, will take care of you. Shut up. From the beginning, when Wu Ming insulted Luo's was already slightly angry. The more Wu Ming said, the angrier Luo's became. In the end, the veins on his head popped out. With a roar, Luo's took out his gift card and took out a sickle-shaped sword. He slashed down at Wu Ming's head. That should be the legendary weapon against immortality, the scythe sword harp. Be careful. Ren and the Black Rabbit were shocked. As a god relic, it could already cause harm to White Yiksha. Naturally, this weapon could also cause harm to Wu Ming. However, 16 Knights and White Yiksha were unfazed. Luo's and the rest's indulgence had weakened his ability by a lot. One could say that if it weren't for Perseus' gift card, Luo's would not have been able to stay in the 5 digits. He would have been pushed down to the 6 digits long ago. White Yiksha and 16 Knights did not think that Luo's could hurt Wu Ming. Both of them wanted to take the opportunity to see Wu Ming's ability. However, it was true that Luo's could not hurt Wu Ming. It was just that both of them were surprised by Wu Ming's defense against Luo's attack. Both of them thought that Wu Ming might dodge or block Luo's attack. However, they never thought that Wu Ming would be able to control Luo's without moving his body at all. That was right. He was controlled. At that moment, Harp was less than a centimeter away from Wu Ming's head. One could say that if Wu Ming moved a little, Harp would slash him. However, Luo's body did not move at all at that moment. What's happening? What did you do? Luo's said in a panic. Although his body could not move, Luo's could still move his mouth. You bastard. What did you do to me? Luo's was really panicking. After all, anyone who was controlled by such an inexplicable method would also be panicking. Hey. You're the descendant of a hero. Don't panic, all right? Wu Ming shrugged helplessly. Oh, is this your telekinesis? I didn't expect it to reach such a level. White Yiksha opened his paper fan and smiled. It could only be said that White Yiksha was indeed the strongest star spirit. He could see the essence of Wu Ming's power at a glance. After all, I'm also a spirit. It's only natural that I have strong mental strength. Wu Ming smiled. What controlled Luo's was the telekinesis formed from pure mental strength. Wu Ming completely attached his telekinesis to Luo's body. As a result, the telekinesis that was many times stronger than Luo's had firmly locked him in place. It was as if he was frozen by an invisible ice block. Moreover, it was an ice block that was 10,000 years old. What? Telekinesis? How could such a weak power control me? Luo's roared angrily and began to struggle free from Wu Ming's telekinesis. However, it was useless. Luo's still couldn't move. He couldn't even tremble slightly. Luo's was completely suppressed by Wu Ming's telekinesis. Don't waste your energy. I even controlled the giant god to float in the sky for fun. You're just a spoiled brat who has been spoiled by eating, drinking, and having fun. How can you break free? Wu Ming mocked. Then, Wu Ming took Heeful from Luo's hand and examined it in his hand. It's indeed a good artifact. If I didn't already have Heeful, I'm afraid this would be mine. However, Black Rabbit couldn't help but complain. I feel that Mr. Villo is more mysterious than we thought. How can that be? I'm just a somewhat special spirit. Then, Wu Ming smiled. However, this smile was like a demon in Luo's eyes. Putting the scythe aside, Wu Ming snapped his fingers. Pot dash, in an instant, a piece of parchment appeared in Wu Ming's hand out of thin air. Then, under the witness of Lord White Yiksha, the ruler of the hierarchy, Lord Luo's, please sign this document. Then, under Luo's horrified gaze, Luo's pressed his fingerprint on this unknown document. Chapter 591. After controlling Luo's like a marionette, Wu Ming removed his control over Luo's. You despicable bastard! Luo's was just about to explode in anger when a terrifying gaze locked onto him. Wu Ming's ruby-like pupils had turned into vertical slits. The pressure that was precisely controlled by Wu Ming pressed down on Luo's, as though it was aimed at him. I just don't want to bully you too much. If you're not afraid of death, you can try. Or you could take out the star spirit on your neck. Wu Ming glanced at the necklace with a snake-haired banshee's head on Luo's neck and continued. The prerequisite is that you're prepared to die. At that moment, Luo's felt like he was looking at a terrifying giant dragon. Pure blood, dragon species. Luo's body trembled as he muttered involuntarily. Hearing this, White Yiksha squinted his eyes and looked at Wu Ming with interest. This made Wu Ming shrug his shoulders helplessly. Then, Wu Ming smiled at Luo's. All right, Master Luo's, you can return to your community. Of course, the Letitia gift competition will continue tomorrow. You know what I mean, right? Wu Ming smiled and waved the parchment with Luo's handprint in front of Luo's. Instantly, Luo's seemed to have thought of something, and his face turned into the color of pig liver. In the end, Luo's left without saying a word. He left helplessly as if he was dead. When Luo's pressed his handprint, Wu Ming purposely slowed down to allow Luo's to see what was on the parchment. At that moment, Luo's fully understood what kind of existence he had provoked. He was completely done for. Speaking of which, what is the content of the document that Mr. Villo made Luo's sign? Black Rabbit asked excitedly. However, White Yiksha, who was interested in Wu Ming's tricks, directly extended his hand. Quick, kid, let me take a look, White Yiksha said as he instantly snatched the parchment from Wu Ming's hand. Everyone gathered around White Yiksha and read the contents on the parchment together. Bestowed game name. Ownership of Perseus contestant. Luo's Pathos contestant's winning condition. Remain calm and not feel fear in the face of the host coercion. Winning condition. The contestant cannot meet the winning condition. Oath. Respecting the above content, based on the glory, flag, and authority of the organizer, this game of blessings will be held. Seal of Originate God. Ah! Renhe, Black Rabbit, and even White Yiksha were all shocked. Their screams made Wu Ming and 16 Knights, who were behind them, take a step back. What's wrong with you guys? Wu Ming scratched his ears and shook his head, which was shocked by the sound of surprise, with a helpless look on his face. Wait. Mr. Villo, is this the authority of the organizer? Black Rabbit looked excited. Wu Ming nodded honestly. It is the authority of the organizer, but why are you guys so excited? But, Mr. Villo, that is the highest authority that very few people can hold. Ren didn't know what to say. Even we were a little out of place. Speaking of which, when did thou obtain the authority of the organizer? White Yiksha used a paper fan to cover the lower half of his face to hide his gaffe. I don't know the exact time. If I have to say, it should be before I came here, Wu Ming thought. Or rather, it was when he was at the No Name base. In No Name's base, I suddenly realized that I had gained a new ability. This ability allowed me to force people to participate in my bestowment competition. Wu Ming looked at everyone. If not for that, Wu Ming wouldn't have chosen to negotiate with Luo's directly. In other words, Wu Ming had already decided that if the leader of Perseus was a decent person, then Wu Ming would try to negotiate with him on the issue of Letitia. And if the other party was an annoying fellow, then sorry, Wu Ming would deal with him directly. After the initial meeting and brief discussion with Luo's, Wu Ming chose the latter. It can only be said that this second generation was too unlucky. Being arrogant and despotic for a long time made him forget his respect for the strong. Even in front of White Yiksha, he was arrogant, not to mention the no name that had no name and flag. However, no one had ever told him that even in no name there were strong people. Omega, and this second generation just happened to bump into Wu Ming's gun. After speaking rudely to Wu Ming out of anger, Wu Ming used his coercion to target him. And ever since Luo's pressed down his handprint, he had already begun his bestowment competition with Wu Ming. After developing a fear of Wu Ming, this guy's community, Perseus, no longer belonged to him, but to the victor, Wu Ming. This once again showed that Luo's had lost his respect for the strong because of eating, drinking, and having fun for a long time. If he still knew respect, then he wouldn't have gotten angry at Wu Ming, who had the authority of the bestowment competition and was clearly a strong person. Wasn't that an act of seeking death? Wu Ming believed that anyone with a little bit of foresight wouldn't have done what Luo's did. Instead, they would have faced Wu Ming in a more rational and kind way. After all, he was facing a hot-tempered guy like Luo's. If it was someone else, Wu Ming wouldn't have put his courage to the test. However, even if Luo's didn't get angry on the spot, Wu Ming wasn't afraid that he wouldn't fall for it because the document didn't have a time limit. In other words, it could continue until Luo's became fearful. That was how word games were played. And through the authority of the bestowment competition, Wu Ming also saw the power of this authority. No wonder the Demon King was called a natural disaster. If Wu Ming carried out such a flawed bestowment competition with Perseus, then they definitely wouldn't have a chance of winning. Well, now that I think about it, if a strong person like you obtained the authority of the bestowment competition, then we wouldn't be so surprised. White Yiksha smiled. Speaking of which, just now Luo's mentioned a pure-blooded dragon species. Is Mr. Villo a pure-blooded dragon species? Black Rabbit asked excitedly. This made everyone focus their attention on Wu Ming. Other than 16 Knights, everyone present knew about the existence of pure-blooded dragon species. Wu Ming's words were also seen in the underground library of No Name. Even in the box court world with many strong people, there are also the existence of the three strongest races: star spirits, natural gods, and pure-blooded dragons. The highest-ranking star spirits of the ghost species, elves, and demons races, the god spirits of natural gods and Buddhas, the pinnacle of phantom beasts, and the pure-blooded dragon species that didn't have the tree of evolution. These three represented the three strongest races in the box court. Among them, the strongest could be said to be the star spirits. This was because the star spirits were the only existence that didn't have much relationship with humans. The other two races were more or less related to humans, and from a certain perspective, it was a fatal relationship. As an example of the star spirits, White Yiksha was the best example. White Yiksha was the star spirit of the sun and White Knight. The best explanation for natural god spirits was those gods that didn't evolve. A typical natural god spirit was in Greek mythology. Zeus and the others were basically natural gods. As for the pure-blooded dragon species, it was a little strange. The pure-blooded dragon species weren't born, but an existence that appeared out of thin air due to the sudden convergence of a powerful force. It was very suitable for the name fantasy species. Such an existence often looked like a dragon, so it was called the pure-blooded dragon species. The pure-blooded dragon species would only have pure-blooded descendants through single reproduction. Combining with a mutant species would only give birth to a subdragon. Wu Ming had the experience of his eyes turning into vertical pupils. Coupled with Luoz's words, everyone couldn't help but suspect Wu Ming's identity. Actually, if I have to say, I'm an existence that's stronger than those things. Wu Ming smiled. Chapter 592. After White Yiksha heard Wu Ming's words, he showed a thoughtful expression. What does that mean? Black Rabbit was very confused by Wu Ming's ambiguous answer. Ren had the same expression as Black Rabbit. On the other hand, 16 Knights Reverse looked excited. Needless to say, this guy was definitely excited because Wu Ming was a powerhouse. Forget it, just treat him as a pure-blooded dragon. Wu Ming sighed. After all, it was not easy to explain the existence of Wu Ming's origin dragon, so it was better to treat him as a pure-blooded dragon. However, everyone was very dissatisfied with Wu Ming's perfunctory answer. Immediately, 16 Knights Reverse exploded. Don't worry about that, little brother. Come and fight with me first, 16 Knights Reverse said directly. Please allow me to refuse. Wu Ming looked at 16 Knights Reverse helplessly. Tisk, you really run away after getting an advantage, 16 Knights Reverse said unhappily. Although Wu Ming did not see any way that he got an advantage. All right, it's getting late. Tomorrow is Letitia's gift competition. Let's go home and sleep early. With that, Wu Ming stood up. Home, Ren and Black Rabbit pondered. When they thought of Letitia returning to No Name tomorrow, the two of them could not help but smile. Then we won't send you off. White Yiksha waved his hand casually. After that, everyone thanked by Yasha and left. After all, without White Yiksha's care, Wu Ming would not have been able to meet Luoz so quickly and trick him. After Wu Ming and the others left, White Yiksha was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he continued to sit in the room. White Yiksha looked at the parchment in his hand and muttered carefully. Originate God. The God of origin, Then, White Yiksha's mouth curled up. Oh, Luoz, you really offended a terrifying guy who is no weaker than me. On the way back to No Name, Black Rabbit was in a good mood and skipped in front. Wu Ming, 16 Knights, and Ren walked at the back, but from their brisk footsteps, they seemed to be in a good mood. After all, he had achieved his goal. Speaking of which, why did Mr. Villo directly ask Luoz to release Letitia? Ren asked. After all, Perseus was now Wu Ming's possession, so why would he waste time and effort to hold a gift competition for Letitia? Wouldn't it be better to just transfer Letitia to No Name? That won't do, little guy. Our No Name still needs to promote. 16th Knight held her head with both hands and said in a light tone. 16th Nights is right. Because of Letitia, our plan to use guard to promote No Name was ruined. Run, have you forgotten? With Wooming's reminder, Ren also remembered that their original purpose was to promote the freshman of No Name. In the end, because he was attracted by Letitia, Ren directly forgot about it. Sorry, Ren smiled embarrassedly. After all, Ren is only an 11-year-old child. With 16th Nights and I here, you can rest assured and train your ability as a leader. We would do everything well. Wooming patted Ren's little head. Thank you, Mr. Villo, Mr. 16th Nights. Ren said emotionally. Ren and 16th Nights smiled because of this. Then 16th Nights seemed to have thought of something and laughed. But speaking of which, it's really interesting. Our plan was ruined because of the blonde lowly, and now we have to promote No Name through the blonde lowly. Indeed, because Letitia defeated Guard, the gift competition between Wooming and the others in Guard was canceled. However, the communities that were enslaved by Guard were freed. Although they were also very grateful to No Name, they praised White Yiksha's brilliance more. After all, it was White Yiksha who directly intervened to punish Guard and force the disbandment of Forsgaro. However, the promotion of No Name was done. However, because of Letitia's matter, Wooming directly used the gift competition to take over Perseus and let Perseus give up the deal with the unknown person and continue the competition with Letitia as the prize. As for whether No Name could win and win back Letitia, Wooming and 16th Nights smiled and didn't say anything. What a joke! The organizers were all on their side. With such convenient conditions, if they still couldn't win the gift competition, then No Name could disband. Of course, it didn't mean that they were going to cheat. Master Little Guy, tomorrow you will see the blonde lowly return to No Name. 16th Nights was ready to make a move. Then, 16th Nights looked at Wooming. You are not allowed to compete with me for the right to participate in this gift competition, little brother. Don't worry, I will definitely not compete with you. After all, with Wooming's secrets revealed one by one, Wooming could be said to be constantly whetting 16th Nights' appetite. Even 16th Nights had a temper. Although Wooming didn't have the slightest bit of guilt, he still let 16th Nights make a move this time. If I make you sick, then the gains will not make up for the losses. Wooming joked. At least you know what's good for you. 16th Nights and Wooming looked at each other and smiled. They reached out a hand, clenched it into a fist, and pressed it against each other. Sometimes, things like friendship were often the same as love. It could be love at first sight. In less than 2 days, Wooming and 16th Nights could be said to be friends. In other words, the 4 problem children who joined No Name could be said to be friends. After all, birds of a feather flock together. Sometimes, fate was such a wonderful thing. Right, Mr. Villo, you just took Mr. Luo's community into your pocket. Will you be treated as a demon king? Black Rabbit said worriedly. Ren also came to his senses. Mr. Villo, this is indeed a problem. However, Wooming shook his head. Although it seems like I used the organizer's authority very casually, Luo's voluntarily pressed his handprint. This isn't considered forcing him. Wooming smiled like a rascal. This made Renhe Black Rabbit a little confused. Indeed, the reason why the Demon King was called the Demon King was because he arbitrarily abused the organizer's authority. However, Wooming really didn't force Luos. Luos voluntarily pressed his handprint and agreed to participate in Wooming's gift competition. However, this voluntarily made Renhe Black Rabbit a little helpless. It was clearly you who forced him. As the leader of the hierarchy, White Yiksha was a witness. Luos could only accept it. 16th Nights helplessly smiled. All right, White Yiksha was an accomplice. That was why Wooming thanked him. You can say that White Yiksha is turning a blind eye. After all, Luos is quite annoying to White Yiksha. Wooming said as he walked. Forget it. As long as nothing happens. Ren's shoulders drooped. He had already given up. It was fine as long as he didn't cause any trouble. Gradually, the abandoned building of No Name appeared in front of everyone. Then, let's bring this good news to everyone. Chapter 593. In other words, Letitia's gift competition will be held as usual, right? Zhou Yuao crossed her arms and nodded unhappily. After Wu Ming and the others returned to No Name, they told Komodo Asuka and Kasuga Biao, who were guarding Letitia's side, about what happened. I'm not happy. Why is 16 Knights participating in tomorrow's gift competition? Why can't Yuao and I participate? Haruai Biao looked at everyone with an unhappy tone. That's right, Zhou Yuao and Haruai Biao were unhappy because Letitia's gift competition was given to 16 Knights instead of them. There's nothing we can do about it. Ladies, your gift competition was yesterday. 16 Knights reverse smiled. But that gift competition was canceled because of Letitia. Zhou Yuao protested. I don't care. It's my turn anyway. 16 Knights smiled and shrugged. He was like a child, acting shamelessly. All right, everyone. This time, it's about who Letitia belongs to. I only let Letitia continue with the gift competition, but I didn't let him change the content. In other words, the content of the gift competition is still unknown. Let's just let 16 Knights participate. Wu Ming helplessly tried to persuade them. After all, even if it's a companion, I won't reveal the content of the gift competition. Wu Ming smiled as if it was a matter of course. This time, even Zhou Yuao and Haruai Biao, these two problem children, didn't say anything. If the gift competition was about fighting, then the two of them would really be in trouble. After all, if they were to compare their combat power, the two of them wouldn't be as good as 16 Knights. Haruai Biao, who had the life catalog, was still okay. At the very least, it was a gift related to the body. However, Zhou Yuao really couldn't do it. After all, her gift was only in the aspect of domination. Even though Zhou Yuao completely controlled Guard, that was only because Guard was too weak. If she encountered a more powerful opponent, then her gift would be completely useless. Take Luo's as an example. No matter how useless Luo's was, no matter how much of a playboy he was still the descendant of Perseus. Wu Ming guessed. No, he was certain. If ancient flying bird used the grace of domination on Luo's, who had hero's blood flowing in his veins, that would only last for a short while before Luo's forcefully broke it open. Wu Ming smiled when he saw Jiu Fei's disappointed expression. How about this, flying bird? After Letitia returns to No Name, let's study your gift. My gift. Jiu Yuanfei was stunned. That's right. Wu Ming nodded. After all, when White Yiksha appraised the grace for us, he said that the grace of the three of you can be said to be the strongest human grace. When Wu Ming said this, everyone reacted. Although Jiu Yuanfei's gift seemed to only be able to control one person, the existence that White Yiksha called the strongest human grace wasn't that simple. Maybe your gift isn't just for controlling others. It might have other effects. Zhou Yuanfei nodded with anticipation at Wu Ming's suggestion. Okay then, but after all, for the sake of Letitia's ownership, let's let 16 Knights fight in tomorrow's gift competition. Zhou Yuanfei nodded rather proudly and agreed. I'm sorry to trouble everyone. At this time, Letitia said rather guiltily. After all, everything this time was caused by Letitia. Although everyone didn't say anything and even enjoyed it, Letitia didn't take it for granted. On the contrary, Letitia, who was especially considerate of her companions, felt even more guilty. Letitia-senpai. Black Rabbit looked at Letitia like this and suddenly had tears in her eyes. Then her ears were grabbed by Jiu Yuanfei and Kasuga Hibiya. What are the two of you doing? Black Rabbit burst into tears. He covered his ears with tears and looked at the two of them. It's just Black Rabbit, don't make it so sad. Kasuga Hibiya said expressionlessly. You're a Hakata noble. You should be more elegant. Jiu Yuanfei smiled. How about Hakata noble, shame? I think Hakata noble, laughter, how about that? Wah, you two problem children. Letitia looked at the problem children who were causing trouble again and couldn't help but smile. It was a very warm kind. Then, Letitia felt a hand on her head. So, you should accept your companion's help as a matter of course. Wu-ming rubbed Letitia's head while watching Black Rabbit being teased by Jiu Yuanfei and Kasuga Hibiya. Villosama, Letitia didn't know what to say anymore. And this is not without a price. If you accept my power, you will become my dependent and be the guardian of no name for the rest of your life. Then, Wu-ming looked at Letitia. Are you prepared for this? Letitia's expression froze, and her eyes firmly met Wu-ming's eyes. Yes, Sama, Letitia is prepared. Wu-ming smiled. Then, go to sleep early and return to No Name tomorrow. Okay. It was late at night, and the moon hung high in the sky, shining down on this lifeless land. The last light in No Name went out, and everyone fell asleep. The next day, everyone woke up early. Whether it was Ren, Black Rabbit, or the three problem children, they all finished their breakfast early and went to No Name's meeting room. Jiu Yuanfei looked at the meeting room with no sign of the two, and was confused. Where did Villo and Letitia go? Are they still lazing around in bed? Could it be that the two of them stayed up very late last night and are too tired to get up? Haruai Hiroyuki said with a blank expression. This made the very pure and innocent Black Rabbit instantly blush. This reminded her of the first time she saw Letitia yesterday, when Wu-ming and Letitia had intimate contact. How could that be? How could Villo, Sama, and Letitia do that kind of thing together? Yao-san, you should watch your words. I didn't say what kind of thing it was. Could it be that Black Rabbit really wanted to see that kind of thing? Haruai Hiroyuki covered his mouth and showed a proud smile. Of course not. Black Rabbit didn't think that way. Black Rabbit blushed and refuted Haruai Hiroyuki. I didn't expect Black Rabbit to be so impure. As expected of a Hakata noble, shameless. Jiu Yuanfei also joked. You two problematic adults. Black Rabbit was crying from the two of them. 16th Night casually looked at this farce and sat down and looked at Rin beside him. Then, did the two of them go to Perseus? Rin nodded. As expected of 16th Night, Mr. Villo, Sama, and Letitia-sama really did go to Perseus. As he said this, Rin took out a piece of paper with Wu-ming's message written on it. There's no need to look. I just want to see if my guess is correct. As he said this, 16th Night casually walked to the window with his hands on his head. Then, 16th Night mischievously shouted at Jiu Yuanfei and Haruai Hiroyuki, who were still teasing Black Rabbit. Hey, it's almost time. I'm going to participate in the gift competition. However, Jiu Yuanfei and Haruai Hiroyuki instantly looked at 16th Night, and their eyes were red like ghosts. Don't even think about running away. That's right. Even if I can't participate in the gift competition, I must watch. Ha ha ha. Then, let's see if you can catch up to me. 16th Night said as he jumped out of the window. Mr. 16th Night? Run and Black Rabbit were shocked, but they immediately reacted. 16th Night wasn't an ordinary person. Don't run. Tu Jiu Yuanfei and Haruai Hiroyuki said as one ran out of the room and the other jumped out of the window. Wait, Miss Flying Bird, Miss Hiroyuki. As expected of the gift Moon Rabbit. Even if she was teased by the two, Black Rabbit would still worry about them. Then, Black Rabbit also ran out, leaving Rin alone. Everyone, wait a minute. Chapter 594. On Wu-ming's side. At present, Wu-ming was not at the place where Perseus was hosting the gift competition. Instead, he was at a certain corner of World's End. However, Wu-ming had indeed sent Laetitia back to Perseus. This time, however, Laetitia was treated as a guest of honor. Last night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Wu-ming had quietly left No Name and made a trip to Perseus. Although Perseus was already Wu-ming's possession, Wu-ming was not like those arrogant people who could just sit back and relax. No matter what, Luos was still a descendant of Perseus. Who knows what kind of tricks Luos might play? After all, the gift competition was mostly a game of words. There were many loopholes to be found. Even though Perseus was essentially Wu-ming's private property, if some thief or robber were to loot Perseus, then Wu-ming would suffer a loss. However, it just so happened that Wu Ming had bumped into some thief who was trying to steal his property. This gave Wu Ming a pleasant surprise. This gave him a reason to properly teach Luo's a lesson. After teaching Luo's a lesson, Wu Ming made a trip to Perseus' storage room and stored all the treasures in Perseus into his dragonist. Wu Ming completely ignored the fact that Luo's was unable to accept the fact that he had fainted. As Luo's loyal subordinates were about to take Luo's away, Wu Ming casually removed the snake-haired banshee's collar from Luo's neck. The members of Perseus who were taught a lesson by Wu Ming dared not say anything. They could only bring Luo's away from Wu Ming. After that, Wu Ming personally ordered and supervised the members of Perseus to set up the gift competition venue overnight. Ignoring the exhaustion of the members of Perseus, under Wu Ming's intense pressure, the previously abandoned gift competition venue was rebuilt overnight. Wu Ming nodded his head in satisfaction and then left. This allowed the members of Perseus to breathe a sigh of relief. However, when Wu Ming left Perseus, he left a huge crack in the ground beside Perseus. This caused the members of Perseus to suck in a breath of relief. After returning to No Name, Wu Ming rested until the sun was about to rise. When he woke up, it had to be said that Wu Ming's mental state was a special characteristic. Wu Ming had an incomparably powerful mental state. He did not need to sleep. However, it was just like 3 meals and snacks. Although Wu Ming did not need the normal 3 meals, he could still enjoy snacks. Wu Ming would not have the time to not rest. Coincidentally, Letitia had also woken up early because she was a little excited. However, this was also good. After all, Letitia was still an item of Perseus. Afterwards, Wu Ming brought Letitia to Perseus and allowed her to move around freely in Perseus as if she was the mistress of the place. This made Letitia a little dumbfounded. However, under Wu Ming's constant petting, Letitia obediently accepted. Although Perseus was not happy because of Luo's failure in the gift competition, the owner of Perseus was Wu Ming. Therefore, they had to listen to Wu Ming, or they could choose to leave Perseus. However, this group of loyal officials chose to stay. It was said that it was because of Luo's father. They had decided to serve Luo's for the rest of their lives. Wu Ming gave a ridiculing smile once more. If Luo's was slightly more ambitious, even if he could not reach 4 digits, at the very least, Perseus would not fall to 5 digits. After instructing the gift competition to start on time, and instructing everyone to invite He-Tu as the referee, Wu Ming left. Wu Ming believed that this matter concerned the ownership of Letitia. He-Tu would surely take up the role of referee. After all, if someone were to cheat in this competition without you-two as the referee and win, He-Tu would have nowhere to cry. However, after leaving Perseus, Wu Ming did not immediately return to No Name. Instead, he went to Wu Ming's current location, World's End. Before leaving, Wu Ming went to look for Luo's and asked him about the person who wanted to buy Letitia. In the end, Luo's, who had been so arrogant earlier, answered Wu Ming's question. A pure-blooded dragon species, Luo's believed, was not to be messed with. Even so, the only answer Wu Ming received was that the other party was a young female in black. Other than that, there was nothing else. This caused Wu Ming to wonder if Luo's was playing with him. However, Luo's old face trembled in fear as he assured Wu Ming that he was not biased. The other party's black cloak seems to have the effect of concealing one's face. I can only tell that it is a female. Those were Luo's own words. However, there are many types of clothing that could conceal one's face after that. Luo's was beaten up by Wu Ming. You only know how to eat, drink, and have fun. Can't you do something useful? Wu Ming complained helplessly. Even so, Luo's was helpless. He only wanted to eat, drink, and have fun. According to Luo's, the other party had suddenly come over and said that they wanted to buy Letitia using something that Luo's was satisfied with. If not for that, Luo's would not have suddenly canceled the gift competition. However, the other party had maintained a sense of mystery and did not tell Luo's what they wanted to buy. In Wu Ming's opinion, the other party might be here to get a free meal. When the time for the transaction came, they would simply rape Letitia. After beating up Luo's again, Wuming asked if there was any meeting point. However, Luo said that she would come over on her own when the time was right. That caused Wuming to feel displeased. Then, in order to avoid getting beaten up again, Luo's mind raced as he recalled the other party's words. If there is anything urgent, just come to World's End. That was the reason why Wuming had come to World's End. However, the man in black who wanted to buy Letitia did not specify how to do so. He only said that he wanted to come to World's End. Thus, Wuming had no way of finding him. However, even if he could not find him, it would not matter. Wuming was simply displeased with how the other party was treating Letitia as an item. Thus, he wanted to see if he could find him and beat him up. Even if he could not find him, it would not matter. However, the heavens are always looking out for me. As he thought about that, Wuming turned to look at the man in black who had just emerged from the small forest. However, when Wuming sensed that the other party was emitting a powerful aura that seemed to be meant to intimidate him, he smiled. It would appear that he had caught a big fish. Is there something that Luo's wants to say? The man in black spoke up. His voice was that of a very sweet young girl. Add her petite figure to the equation. It was no wonder Luo's told him that she was a young female man in black. Next, Wuming smiled. Sir Luo's wants me to tell you that the transaction is off. Chapter 595. Reject. Facing Wuming's sudden rejection, the girl in black was clearly stunned. Perhaps in the girl's eyes, Luo's this trash would not reject. But now, the situation was out of her expectations. But this way, the girl in black also noticed that something was not right. From the intelligent girl's point of view, Luo's, this rich second generation, would not reject their deal. Then, there were two possibilities. Either Luo's was unable to continue the deal due to other matters, such as being threatened, or the man in front of her was lying to her. For example, the man in front of her was the one who threatened Luo's. To be able to represent Luo's in rejecting the deal, the man in front of her was definitely not as simple as he looked. All in all, this seemingly ordinary little specter must have a lot to do with Luo's rejecting their deal. Thus, the slightly unhappy girl decided to make a move on the man in front of her to make up for her unhappiness. Just because he said he would cancel, what kind of people do you think we are? The girl in black said rudely to Wuming. The girl in black had already started, so she needed to pick a fight. But Wuming also wanted to have a good talk with the girl in front of him who was not simple. That's because Lord Luo's can't even protect himself, so he had no choice but to cancel the deal with you. Wuming was not angry at the girl's rudeness, but instead replied her with a light tone. Can't even protect himself? Wuming's words made the girl in black interested. But according to what I know, Perseus has been doing well recently, and is even preparing to migrate to 6 figures. This made Wuming smile. Oh, I didn't think that a rat like you who hides outside the box would have such a good way to gather information. Wuming smiled. However, the scoundrel in Wuming's words angered the black-clothed girl. A mere specter dares to call His Highness a rat. The girl was completely angered by Wuming's insults. In an instant, the girl's figure disappeared. In the next second, the girl's figure appeared in front of Wuming. It looked like the girl was throwing herself at Wuming. But no matter how he thought about it, it was impossible. The girl took out a small knife from under her black cloak and stabbed towards Wuming, who was very close to her. But Wuming did not care about the girl's attack. Instead, he was thinking about the girl's words. Listening to the girl's words, it seemed like His Highness was her master. This was really interesting. Someone who could be addressed as Your Highness was definitely not a simple person. While Wuming was thinking, the girl's daggers his finger. Generally speaking, daggers shouldn't be effective against ghosts, but Wuming could tell that the girl's dagger wasn't an ordinary dagger. Although this dagger did not look like a divine artifact, there must be something special about it. At the very least, it could stab spirits. After all, Wuming did not think that this seemingly shrewd girl would do such an embarrassing thing. Indeed, just as Wuming had guessed, the girl's dagger could hurt beings like spirits. But in essence, such a dagger was just a special dagger that was mass-produced. It wasn't that precious. It was only because of the girl's fighting style that she used such a dagger. Then, the girl in black's dagger directly stabbed into Wuming's body. In the girl's opinion, the arrogant specter in front of her did not have the chance to react and was killed by her. However, Wuming could not be stabbed to death by a slightly special dagger. Or rather, it could not even cause any damage to Wuming. If I'm really an ordinary specter, maybe I can really go to hell. Hearing Wuming's tone that did not sound like he was weak after being stabbed, the girl in black was obviously shocked. The girl was sure that she had indeed stabbed the dagger into Wuming's body. Even if it was a specter, after being hit by her attack, it should be dead. Then, the girl in black used the technique of getting close to Wuming again. In an instant, she and Wuming were separated by a considerable distance. She did not even want to stab the dagger into Wuming's body. It looked like a teleportation, but Wuming, who had a little experience in space, could tell that it was not teleportation. "Is your technique controlling distance?" Wuming asked casually. "Who the hell are you?" The girl in black was shocked. While she said vigilantly, the girl took out a dagger to defend herself. She already had the idea of retreating. "After all, I'm not an ordinary specter." Wuming calmly pulled out the dagger that was inserted into his body. After pulling out the dagger, only a hole was left on his clothes. Wuming's body did not have any major injuries. It could be said that he was unscathed. Playing with the dagger in his hand, Wuming looked at the girl in black. "Compared to these unimportant matters, I'm more interested in your background, Miss Man in Black." Wuming smiled slightly and then began to chant, "Fear the one with wings. Evil people and powerful people are all afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you curses. Evil people can't hit me." When Wuming was chanting, he released a trace of his aura, which made the black-clothed girl freeze. It was as if she had met an acquaintance. However, the girl also knew that what Wuming was chanting was not something good, so she quickly reacted. However, although Wuming seemed to be chanting slowly, his speed was actually very fast. By the time the girl in black reacted, Wuming had already finished chanting. In other words, the girl lost the chance to escape. In an instant, Wuming's entire person vanished. The next moment, as if it was ironic, Wuming's figure appeared in front of the girl in black, just like how the girl approached Wuming. He tightly stuck to the girl's body as if he was throwing himself into her arms. Wuming also lifted the girl's black cloak while he was at it. What entered Wuming's eyes was a petite girl with long black hair, wearing a sleeveless dress and a short jacket tied around her waist. "I didn't expect the girl to look so good," Wuming said teasingly, "but don't think too much about it." The reason why Wuming used the phoenix incarnation to stick to the girl's body was because Wuming wanted an eye for an eye. After all, no one would be happy to be stabbed in the back all of a sudden. This was also the reason why the girl did not move when Wuming was so close to her and was teased by Wuming. The girl was stabbed in the back by Wuming. Ugh! The girl covered her abdomen and staggered back 2 steps. However, just when the girl thought that she could rely on distance control to retreat, she found that her ability did not work. What's going on? My ability doesn't work. The temporary failure of her ability, coupled with the injury on her abdomen, made the girl cry out. Her legs went soft, and she almost knelt on the ground. However, Wuming hugged the girl's body in time. "Your ability is distance control, right? I have used a sealing technique to temporarily seal your ability." "Seal? Seal?" The girl was shocked. There were many silencing skills in Yggdrasil World Tree, which were skills that existed to prevent the enemy from using their skills. Wuming naturally learned 1 or 2 of such a convenient skill. He was no longer constrained by the game system. The silencing skill he used had reached a duration of half an hour. In other words, if the girl only had the ability to control distance, then she was doomed today. Of course, it did not mean that Wuming's silencing skill could silence the opponent 100% of the time. It still depended on the strength of the enemy. Just like White Yiksha, Wuming estimated that the silencing skill could only work for less than a second. However, for the girl who was smart, half an hour of silence was already good enough. "Then, can you tell me who your master is? The girl who has become my captive?" Chapter 596. Just like that, the girl's abdomen was bleeding while Wu Ming held her in his arms and questioned her in an unnegotiable tone. If the girl's wound was removed, this scene would look like a beautiful scene of a young boy and a young girl hugging each other. However, Wu Ming was not the kind of person who would be blinded by his enemy's lust, and the girl would not fall in love with a guy who stabbed her and questioned her at the moment. The result was that they could not come to an agreement. I won't say anything. Don't think of getting any information from me. The girl glared fiercely at Wu Ming. The girl had already admitted defeat. The reason why she was sent to negotiate with Luo's was because she was smart and had the ability to retreat easily. If one had to say something, the girl was actually very weak. However, this way, Wu Ming could completely suspect whether there were companions who were secretly protecting her or communicating with her. It doesn't matter if you don't say anything. I think you're not the only one around. There should be companions or something like that. At this moment, an object suddenly charged towards Wu Ming's position. However, Wu Ming did not panic in the face of this attack. For Wu Ming, who had already activated the Phoenix transformation and entered the Seraphic speed world, such an attack was completely dodged. However, Wu Ming did not want to dodge. I'm the strongest and the one who holds all victory in my hands. No matter if it's a human or a demon, I am the one who defeats all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. Giant with supreme divine power, give me your assistance. In just a moment, Wu Ming deactivated the Phoenix transformation and activated the Giant transformation. In an instant, a golden giant shadow appeared behind Wu Ming. However, the giant shadow exuded a powerful aura that would not make people think that the giant was really virtual. Following Wu Ming's consciousness, the giant raised its fist and swung it at the incoming object. Boom! With a loud boom, the giant's fist collided with the unknown object. The unknown object was like a baseball that was sent flying by Wu Ming's giant bat. However, the force of the collision created a strong storm that instantly spread to the surroundings. The storm swept through the surrounding forest. Trees that were very close to the epicenter of the storm were directly blown down. The surrounding trees were almost parallel to the ground. The wind swept Wu Ming, causing his clothes to flutter. However, Wu Ming himself remained motionless in the wind. On the other hand, the girl in Wu Ming's arms was almost blown away by this astonishing storm, and she even let out a pitiful cry. If it wasn't for Wu Ming's arm for the girl to hug, the girl would have already flown out. If the girl, who had temporarily lost her ability, was blown away, she would either die or be seriously injured. After all, the girl's body was not that strong. The storm slowly came to a stop, and Wu Ming saw the face of the thing that attacked him. It was a pitch-black griffin with some dragon characteristics. Just now, this griffin wanted to use its hard body to collide with Wu Ming, but it was hammered away by Wu Ming's giant form. The griffin stopped in the sky and shook its head that was hammered by Wu Ming's giant form. The griffin looked in the direction of Wu Ming and the girl, or rather, directly at Wu Ming. The griffin was not stupid. It could still see that the giant shadow was controlled by Wu Ming. "Are you okay?" The girl, who had calmed down, asked the griffin in the sky worriedly. Wu Ming glanced at the girl. Her initial hesitation was obviously because she swallowed the griffin's name that was about to come out of her mouth. He had to admit that the girl's method was quite good. She really didn't give any information. "I'm fine." The griffin shook its head, then flew down and landed in front of Wu Ming not far away. "Your Excellency, I apologize on her behalf for her previous offensive behavior. There is no need for us to be enemies." The griffin began to negotiate with Wu Ming. However, the griffin's words made Wu Ming laugh. "Oh, you two are indeed in the same group. Even your actions are the same." The girl also made the first move. When she realized that she couldn't win, she was prepared to escape. In the end, she was captured by Wu Ming. The griffin also made the first move, but was beaten back by Wu Ming's giant with a punch. Only then did they begin to negotiate. "If I didn't have some tricks up my sleeve, I'm afraid that I would have died here today." Wu Ming mocked the girl and the griffin. It was really as Wu Ming had said. Their behavior was indeed somewhat immoral. The young girl's face blushed a little. However, the griffin was an existence that appeared to be more mature than the girl. It did not feel ashamed of Wuming's words. Even Boxland, which uses the gift competition as its main means of survival of the fittest, has to make do with the law of the jungle. Not to mention, this is World's End, which is no longer part of Boxland City. The griffin said calmly. Indeed, no matter where one was, in order to survive and negotiate with others, one needed strength. If Wuming was weak, then sorry, but Wuming was not qualified to negotiate with them. Thus, if Wuming was weak, then he would either die to the girl's dagger or die to the griffin and become its dinner. However, Wuming was very strong. He was so strong that he could capture the girl and beat back the griffin with a punch. With that, Wuming was qualified to negotiate with them. You're right. I agree with what you said, so I can't blame you. Wuming shrugged. Wuming also believed in the principle of respecting the strong, which coincided with the griffins. However, when the griffin thought that it saw an opportunity to negotiate, Wuming's next move made it uneasy. Be afraid of those with wings. Evil people and strong people are afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you curses. Evil people can't hit me. Wuming chanted the language spirit at an extremely fast speed. The girl closest to Wuming heard this familiar language spirit and immediately shouted at the griffin. Be careful. This language spirit has an ability similar to mine. When the griffin heard this, it immediately spread its wings and flew into the sky. However, for Wuming, who had entered the state of lightning speed, the griffin's speed was too slow. In an instant, Wuming, who was carrying the girl, jumped fiercely, and Wuming disappeared along with the golden giant's shadow. Be careful. Suddenly, the griffin heard the girl's voice above its head. The griffin subconsciously raised its head and saw a huge golden fist. Boom! A dull sound came from the forest. It was a pity that the surrounding birds had either died or fled in the first round of the storm. Otherwise, they might be able to see a scene of birds flying together. Looking at the griffin pressed to the ground by the golden giant's shadow, Wuming smiled. Then, we can negotiate now. Chapter 597. The griffin was pressed to the ground by Wuming's golden giant shadow. No matter how hard the griffin flapped its wings, it couldn't get rid of the giant's suppression. This was because when Wuming used the giant shadow to press down on the griffin, he also silenced it. However, the effect wasn't great because this griffin relied on its own physical strength. Don't waste your energy. I think negotiating with me is your only way, unless you have other companions with special abilities. Wuming smiled at the griffin under his feet. Although Wuming was in his spiritual form at this moment, his abilities were basically the same as his main body. In other words, Wuming could use multiple avatars. It could be said that if it weren't for Wuming wanting to have fun with the griffin, Wuming would have killed it with a sure kill. But after all, the main thing now was to gather information. Moreover, Wuming wasn't a demon who liked to kill, so he wouldn't directly end the griffin's life. You're a powerhouse. I have to admit that. However, the griffin didn't give in just because it was subdued. It just generously admitted that it was inferior to Road. I'm indeed no match for you. This time it's my loss. Although Wuming liked tough guys like the griffin, it was still very annoying when the enemy didn't give in after being subdued. I don't hate guys like you, but if you lose, you have to admit it. I don't want to fight. Tell me honestly what information you have. With that, Wuming stretched out his hand and placed it on the girl's stomach. Wah! Stinky rogue, what are you doing? The girl in Wuming's hand instantly changed. She didn't care that her bleeding body hadn't stopped and desperately tried to stop the rogue in front of her from attacking her. Wuming sighed. Then he half-curled his fist and pointed his index finger at the girl's head. Bang! Wah! The girl held her head in pain and kicked wildly in the air while shouting. Don't think too much. I just want to show my sincerity and treat you. After saying that, Wuming placed his hand on the girl's injured stomach. Then, Wuming suddenly pulled. Ah! It hurts! It hurts! The girl instantly moved her hand from her head to her stomach. Because Wuming had pulled out the dagger from her abdomen, The wound that had started to stop bleeding started to bleed profusely again. She was in so much pain that she felt like she was hovering between life and death, she thought. This caused the griffin under Wuming's feet, which was controlled by the golden giant's phantom, to frown. Its body, which had just stabilized, began to struggle again. I protest. This is blatant torture. The young girl looked at Wuming with tears in her eyes, looking as if she had been greatly wronged. Both the girl and the griffin began to suspect that Wuming was just bluffing when he said that he would treat her as a show of sincerity. This made Wuming feel rather helpless. He didn't know who started it first, but this was called reaping the consequences of one's own actions. Just treat it as a punishment. Ignoring the griffin's struggle and the girl's resistance, Wuming carried the girl with one hand and casually threw the dagger with the other. The dagger was firmly controlled in the air by Wuming's mental strength. Then, Wuming lifted the girl's head again, making the girl move her hand to her head. Wuming put his hand on the girl's bleeding stomach again. Then, the girl felt a warm current on her stomach. Wuming was using the life recovery magic to treat the girl. At the same time, the pain on her stomach was slowly disappearing, which made the girl feel as if she was soaking in a hot spring. The result of this was naturally the girl making a strange sound. The girl quickly covered her mouth, blushing and not daring to look at Wuming. This made Wuming laugh. Is it that comfortable? Wuming looked at the girl teasingly. This made the girl's blushing face even redder. The griffin under Wuming's feet pretended not to see this. After seeing that Wuming was really treating the girl, it stopped struggling. All right, it shouldn't hurt anymore. Wuming removed his hand from the girl's stomach. Through the hole in her dress, the girl's smooth skin on her stomach was exposed. Thank you. The good upbringing made the girl blush as she thanked Wuming. But the girl forgot that it was the guy she thanked who stabbed her. Then, Wuming teased the girl back. The feeling on your stomach is not bad. Wuming's teasing made the girl realize that the guy in front of her was an enemy. She also remembered that she was injured because of this guy. But the girl forgot that the guy stabbed her because she stabbed him first, although she did not cause any damage. The girl stared at Wuming as if she was acting shamelessly and did not speak. And Wuming was not angry. Instead, he looked at the griffin under his feet. Kid, my name is Glea Graves. Left with no choice, the griffin could only speak first. Elder Ge. After the griffin spoke, the girl shouted in surprise. It was as if she did not understand why the griffin would compromise. Elders make me feel more at ease, although I'm still not satisfied with this. After all, Wuming would rather not know the name than no other information. Even if Elder Ge spoke, I will not tell you any information. For the sake of Her Highness, you should give up. The girl turned her head and no longer looked at Wuming. Not bad, young lady. Wuming had a whole new level of respect for the young lady's courage. In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless. Wuming turned the girl's face with his hand and smiled at her. What do you want to do? Looking at this extremely scary smile, the girl wanted to step back in horror, but she found that she was still in Wuming's hands. Suddenly, Glea Graves spoke. Don't go too far, kid. Glea raised his head slightly and looked at Wuming with sharp eyes. However, Wuming laughed. That's funny, Griffin. Wuming did not call the griffin by his name, but called him by his creature's name. Although I was indeed interested in you guys who wanted to buy Letitia, you guys made the first move from the beginning. I was just passively counterattacking. Then, Wuming closed his eyes and opened them again. His originally red pupils instantly turned into golden vertical pupils. Endless pressure emanated from Wuming's body. Or is it because my easygoing nature made you guys think that I'm easy to provoke? Do you have to wait until I'm serious before you guys tell me the truth? Sensing Wuming's terrifying aura, Glea and the girl froze. You are. Glea's reaction made Wuming narrow his eyes. This reaction was the same as the girl's reaction when she sensed his aura. In other words, these two people knew him. At the very least, they were familiar with his aura. This made Wuming laugh. In this case, these two people might have seen his original body, or their organization might have information about his original body. According to the worst-case scenario, Wuming's original body might have been stolen by them. At this moment, there was a riot in the surrounding forest. Rumble. Chapter 598. Feeling the tremors from the ground, Wuming could not help but look in a certain direction. Wuming could sense that something was running over from the direction he was looking at. Did your companions come to save you? However, the two of them did not answer Wuming's question. Not bad. You chose not to speak because someone is here to save you? Wuming smiled. Then, have you ever thought that I might directly kill your companions who came to save you? Wuming's words did not shake the two of them, as if the person who came was not their partner. In other words, the two of them thought that Wuming could not kill the person who came. At that moment, the creatures that caused the tremors appeared. More than 10 white dragon lizards that looked like lizards but were a few times larger than an ordinary person charged at Wuming. Wuming could sense that these large lizards were very powerful. They were at least in the 5 digits. However, even so, Wuming was not afraid. Then, Wuming began chanting a new spirit language. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now, I'll have the majesty of 10 mountains, the power of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 giant dragons. The majestic me will raise the ferocious mark of a dragon. Wuming finished chanting the spirit language at a speed that seemed slow but was actually very fast. In an instant, the golden giant shadow behind Wuming began to change. Initially, the giant shadow behind Wuming was just an ordinary golden giant. However, after Wuming finished chanting the spirit language, the golden giant began to grow into the characteristics of a dragon. Dragon horns, dragon claws, dragon whiskers, dragon tail, and everything that was related to a dragon grew on the golden giant shadow. In an instant, the golden giant shadow turned into a golden dragonoid shadow. The pressure that the dragonoid shadow exuded shocked Griya and the girl. At that moment, it was as if a pure-blood dragon had appeared in front of them. This is the combination of Wuming's giant avatar and my dragon-type avatar. A dragonoid with the ability to kill dragons combined with a tall and strong giant would result in a dragonoid. In the next moment, under Wuming's control, the golden dragon man raised its fist high and smashed it down viciously at the oncoming white dragon lizards. Boom! The white dragon lizard was easily annihilated. A violent shockwave reverberated throughout World's End. This time, however, the attack from the giant silhouette, which had condensed its power, did not cause a tempest. However, it did cause a lot of dust. Abruptly sweeping away the dust around him, Wuming looked at Griya and the girl who were originally beside him, but had now disappeared and frowned slightly. Wuming had just sensed that someone had teleported Griya and the girl away while he was controlling the golden dragonoid to attack the white dragon lizards. Shortly after, Wuming turned to the side and saw a gentlemanly man with elegant light brown hair standing behind him. It seems like you're rather powerful to be able to seize the opportunity to rescue them from under my nose. Wuming gazed at the man. I can't help it. Even though I'm not completely on their side, I'm still considered their companion. After all, I have to rescue them if I can. The man smiled at Wuming gracefully, but in Wuming's opinion, he was rather arrogant. Be afraid of those with wings. Evil people and powerful people are afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you curses. Evil people can't hit me. Wuming glared with his golden vertical pupils and finished his thought. In an instant, the powers of the 3 avatars, Giant, Dragon, and Phoenix, burst forth at the same time. Wuming vanished in an instant, bringing along the golden dragonoid shadow. Then, a huge golden fist with 10,000 tons of power instantly smashed the man into the ground. This time, Wuming didn't hold back like he did with the girl and Griya. The punch he threw at the man was a full-force blow. The dragonoid shadow slowly raised its fist, and specks of blue particles disappeared with the wind. Wuming was certain that the blue particles belonged to the man just now. Now, he had been reduced to ashes. However, Wuming could be said to have failed this time. Oh my, you're really powerful. The man's voice came from behind Wuming. Ming's eyes showed some confusion. Then, Ming turned around unhurriedly. He had to admit that this was really bold. Ming was not afraid of the enemy sneaking up on him. Hence, Ming turned around slowly. The enemy was also in a hurry to attack, and chose to wait for Ming to turn around slowly. Ming turned around. In the end, the man who should have been smashed to pieces really reappeared here. Moreover, he was behind Ming. Now, Ming understood why Gria and the girl weren't worried about the newcomer at all. It seemed like this thing couldn't be killed. Can't be killed. Ming began to guess the other party's ability. Thank you for taking care of that attack just now. My name is Maxwell. The man, or rather, Maxwell bowed to Ming and did not attack. You're not attacking? Ming asked casually. Maxwell shook his head. I know my own abilities. Even if you're only a soul now, you're not someone existence like me can offend. Maxwell shook his head elegantly. However, through this sentence, Ming learned a lot of things. My mission has been completed. Then, I'll take my leave first. See you next time, powerful dragon species. In an instant, Maxwell's figure disappeared. However, the moment he disappeared, Ming noticed a slight change in the space. It doesn't seem like a space shift. Ming pondered. He had to admit that the box court was really an interesting place. The teleportation that he encountered was basically not a simple space shift. Moreover, through the various actions and words of this wave of people just now, Ming could tell. The other party seemed to know about his own main body. Ming guessed that either the other party was related to the demon lord who had attacked No Name, or the other party was the demon lord who had attacked No Name. However, there was still too little information. Ming's inference was only an analysis of his own main body. If only there was more information. TSK, I should have directly captured the griffin and the girl before. However, this time when he came out to meet with the other party, he did not have the mentality of being able to obtain any information. In the end, he got some information about his main body. He shook his head and stopped thinking about these messy things. Canceling the transformation state, Ming waved one hand, and a dark space door appeared in front of Ming. 16 knights should have won. It seems that I have to prepare a little. With that, Ming entered the portal and disappeared, leaving behind a mess. Chapter 599. On a sunny afternoon, the lower level of the eastern district of Boxting presented a warm and peaceful scene. In the Thousand Eyes branch, White Yiksha closed his eyes and slowly tasted the tea leaves in his teacup, enjoying the peace that was hard to come by. Suddenly, a purplish-black dimensional portal appeared before White Yiksha, like a black hole. White Yiksha opened his eyes slightly and looked at the ripple that was like a black hole with interest. Then, when he sensed that someone was coming out, White Yiksha held his teacup with one hand and waved his free hand at the dimensional portal. A seemingly ordinary but powerful energy bomb was launched at the black hole. As a result, Ming, who had just come out of the dimensional portal, was hit in the face by the energy bomb. Master White Yiksha, do I have a grudge against you? Ming grabbed the energy bomb that was about to explode, but could not as it was suppressed by Ming. He looked at White Yiksha helplessly. Oh, isn't this Villo? I didn't expect this to be your trick. White Yiksha took his time and calmly took a sip of tea. Later on, White Yiksha looked at Ming. It seems like you're not in a good mood. Ming sighed when he heard what White Yiksha said. He had just stepped out of the dimensional portal and was hit in the face by an energy bomb. No matter who it was, they would not be in a good mood. If you're in a good mood, it's just that I've encountered something. Later on, Ming thought of something and sat down next to White Yiksha. Speaking of which, Letitia's gift competition should be over. What's the result? As he asked White Yiksha, golden ripples appeared in the air around Ming. A luxurious crystal bottle flew out from Ming's relic space. Later on, Ming snapped his fingers and created a crystal cup with his Create Green item skill. Through his telekinesis, he controlled the crystal bottle, and the crystal bottle in the air poured wine into the cup in Ming's hand. Just like that, Ming began to drink by himself. Looking at the crystal bottle floating beside Wuming and smelling the fragrance of the wine in Wuming's hand, White Yiksha put down the teacup in his hand. Isn't the result obvious? No name won. At the same time, 16th Knights and Rin gained some prestige. White Yiksha was there to watch No Name's match. 16 Knights had won beautifully, and No Name was in the limelight. Is that so? 16 Knights is quite fast. Wuming downed the wine in his cup in one gulp. Noticing that White Yiksha's attention was on his wine, Wuming smiled in relief. Do you want some? This is a good wine that I plundered from Perseus, Wuming said as he shook the bottle in his hand. Needless to say, Luos really knew how to enjoy himself. He spent a lot of his community's voluntary exchange and could afford to be luxurious for once. This bottle of wine that was over 10,000 years old was one of Luos's luxurious items. You really know how to do this kind of business. As a witness to the gift competition between Luos and Wuming, White Yiksha naturally knew that Perseus became Wuming's possession. Then, Wuming casually taking things from Perseus was naturally legal. But I like it. White Yiksha showed a well-done smile. Wuming snapped his fingers, and another, similar crystal cup appeared in the air. The crystal bottle automatically tilted, and the wine in the bottle poured into the crystal cup. After it was full, the crystal cup floated in front of White Yiksha. White Yiksha took the wine and downed it in one gulp and made a sound of satisfaction. Ah, it's really good wine. Another cup. The crystal bottle automatically poured wine for White Yiksha and Wuming. Like old drinking buddies, the two of them drank together. Then, why did you come to me, since you already guessed the result? White Yiksha's face was slightly red as he narrowed his eyes, giving off the feeling of being drunk. Wuming downed the wine in his cup in one gulp and looked at White Yiksha without hesitation. Actually, I'm here to ask you about the godhood, Garen said. Oh, godhood? White Yiksha's eyes lit up. After all, I'm not from this world. I don't know much about godhood, so I wanted to ask you who can bestow godhood to others. After all, there was no such thing as godhood in Wuming's power system. Among the people he knew, White Yiksha was the only one who had a good relationship with him and could bestow godhood to others. If I'm not wrong, you want to know about godhood because of Letitia, right? White Yiksha was not in a hurry to answer Wuming's question. He took his time to sip his wine. That's right. Wuming nodded. He was not surprised that White Yiksha had guessed his thoughts. Wuming had no intention of hiding it, and White Yiksha was a smart person. Hence, it was normal for him to be able to guess it. Letitia's strength had become so weak because she had handed over her godhood. She had once said that her strength was not even 1/10 of her original strength. Hence, Wuming wanted to ask if there was any alternative method. I have to say, kid, you've asked the right person. White Yiksha immediately took out his folding fan and proudly covered the lower half of his face. You should know that I'm in the top 10 of the boxers. I've also had a lot of experience in bestowing godhood. This surprised Wuming. Although Wuming could see that White Yiksha was extraordinary, Wuming did not expect White Yiksha to be in the top 10. However, why did he suddenly feel that the boxer's combat strength was very low, as if he could see Wuming's speechless ridicule? White Yiksha knocked on Wuming with his folding fan. Kid, don't be so careless. You should know that your strength is very strong. Even I'm not confident that I can defeat you. Hearing White Yiksha's words, Wuming felt relieved. The Origin Dragon's strength increased with age. If Wuming had stayed in the Origin and never left, even if he did not have the Savior Divine Blade, the 12 incarnations, and did not have magic or Lune, Wuming could look down on all things with just his Origin Dragon's physical body. In other words, when the Origin Dragon was fully grown, it would be a huge dragon with high HP, high defense, and strong attack. No one could break its defense, invincible physical body. No one could indirectly curse, seal, etc., harm it. No one could escape its pursuit, free travel between worlds, and no one could block its attacks. Powerhouses did not have any fancy abilities. It was just a casual attack. As a young Origin Dragon, Wuming had mastered many techniques. Through the enhancement of his race's strength, Even in this boxer's world with many powerhouses, he could dominate an area. Moreover, it was the kind that no one could control. However, then I'm sorry. Actually, I don't know my own limits. Chapter 600. Wu Ming shrugged his shoulders jokingly, which made White Yiksha very unhappy. White Yiksha wanted to tell Wu Ming that he was very strong, but Wu Ming was like an ordinary person who had won $5 million and saved in the bank, continuing to live an ordinary life. However, White Yiksha thought about it and did not fly into a rage. Well, as the star spirit of the sun, I'm the same as you. White Yiksha was the materialization of the heaven-shaking spiritual lattice. He was originally a demon king born as an unaffiliated human in the final trial. Due to the development of technology, the heaven-shaking spiritual lattice was outlawed, and the danger of White Yiksha as a human in the final trial was indirectly eliminated. However, the powerful White Yiksha was still very powerful. It did not mean that White Yiksha was crippled without the heaven-shaking spiritual lattice. That was because White Yiksha was the star spirit of the sun. As a sun that existed longer than humans, White Yiksha could not be weak no matter how one thought about it. In addition, White Yiksha was not a cruel person at heart. Therefore, White Yiksha accepted the Yiksha godhood of Buddhism, lowered his spiritual lattice, and came to the lower class of the box court world to be the ruler of the class. However, if one were to look at the whole story, White Yiksha and Wu Ming were really the same kind of people. They were experts who appeared out of thin air. They were not strong in the early stages, but were basically invincible in the later stages. Not to mention, you have the power of the sun in your body. It's completely possible for someone to say that we are relatives. White Yiksha was referring to Wu Ming's sun incarnation. Then, my relative, Lord White Yiksha, do you have any thoughts about Letitia losing her godhood? Wu Ming directly hit the nail on the head and began to claim kinship with White Yiksha in a joking manner. Regarding Letitia, I don't have a choice. White Yiksha shook his head. Although godhoods seem to be mass-produced, there are many drawbacks. White Yiksha began to explain to Wu Ming. Letitia's godhood is exclusive to her. It was bestowed by the expert who created the vampires. The expert who created the vampires? Wu Ming asked in confusion. White Yiksha was deeply gratified by Wu Ming's ignorance. I'm afraid you don't know that Letitia's race was created by the dragon who carried the world. Carrying the world dragon, the name sounded grand, almost comparable to his own origin dragon. I'm not too sure about the specifics. All you need to know is that it's a dragon with a world on its back, White Yiksha told Wu Ming simply. Letitia's vampire clan was created by that guy, and Letitia's divinity was also given by him. Then, White Yiksha explained the godhead to Wu Ming in detail. Different gods and Buddhas bestowed different godhoods. For example, the godhoods bestowed by 2-digit godhoods were much stronger than those bestowed by 5-digit godhoods. What if White Yiksha bestowed Letitia with a new godhood? Wu Ming asked. After all, Wu Ming wanted Letitia to recover her previous strength. Since that was the case, wouldn't it be better to have the White Yiksha's bestow divinity to Letitia? You're dreaming, kid. White Yiksha attacked Wu Ming mercilessly. Let's not talk about the fact that my strength has been suppressed. It won't be that easy to bestow a divinity to Letitia. Besides, if I bestow a divinity to Letitia, then she will belong to Thous, and yes, that's really fine. After all, to be able to recover Letitia's previous strength, she would need someone like White Yiksha. If White Yiksha bestowed a godhood, she would become a dependent. Just like the big snake at the end of the world, it was White Yiksha's dependent. I'm just asking. I've never thought of asking you to bestow Letitia with a godhood. After all, Wu Ming also had the ability to bestow power to others. Speaking of which, don't you have the ability to bestow power to others? White Yiksha asked, puzzled. Logically speaking, someone at Wu Ming's level should also have the means to bestow power to others. Cough. Yes, there is. It's just that the process wasn't very friendly. Wu Ming smiled awkwardly. Wuming's magician, incarnation, formerly one of Welleslana's 10 incarnations, the youth incarnation could bestow power to others. However, it could only bestow power to humans. Letitia, a vampire, probably could not. Wuming's current magician, incarnation, also had the ability to bestow protection to others. White Princess Alice had been bestowed protection by Wuming more than once. However, only mouth-to-mouth was the most effective and fastest way. However, the power instilled in this way would eventually be exhausted. In other words, if the power was exhausted, he would have to go through the embarrassing process again. Although Letitia had once wanted to give herself to Wuming because of a misunderstanding, it was still a misunderstanding. This method was not very friendly to the current Letitia. However, other than that, Wuming had another method. One of the 12 incarnations, the dependent incarnation. Wuming had wanted to use this method from the very beginning, but it was slightly unfair to Letitia. After all, if she accepted Wuming's contract and became his dependent, she would truly become one of Wuming's people, just like the Skywing species. What Wuming hoped for was for Letitia to become the guardian of No Name, not his own dependent. That was why Wuming had asked White Yiksha about the godhood. Forget it. I'll go back and discuss it with Letitia. Wuming rubbed his brow as he felt a headache coming on. Oh, you have an idea. White Yiksha held the wine glass and took another sip. You can say that. As Wuming said that, he used his telekinesis to control the crystal wine bottle and poured himself another glass of wine before downing it in one gulp. Thank you for telling me so much, White Yiksha. Then I'll take my leave. With that said, Wuming did not stand on ceremony. He crushed the wine glass he had created using the create green item and let it dissipate into magic particles in the air. After that, Wuming stood up and opened the portal to No Name. The moment before he entered, Wuming turned to look at White Yiksha. White Yiksha, there's still quite a bit of wine left in that bottle. I'll give it to you. Oh. Then, I won't stand on ceremony. White Yiksha did not hesitate to grab the crystal bottle in the air. Thank you again for your help, White Yiksha. With that said, Wuming entered the portal and left the branch of No Name. There's nothing to thank. Just treat it as me making up for my hesitation 3 years ago. No Name Base, Conference Room. Welcome back, Senior Letitia. The Black Rabbit hugged Letitia happily and rubbed against the ground. The return of his former companions really made Black Rabbit quite happy. However, Juyuo, Asuka, and Haruhi Byari looked at the fat on the chest of the Black Rabbit that had buried Letitia's head, and then looked at their own chests. Black Rabbit, your extra meat is really too much of a hindrance. He needs to be punished. After the two of them finished speaking, they grabbed the Black Rabbit's ears. Why are you treating the Black Rabbit like this? Looking at Kyugo Asuka and Haruhi Byayoi, Letitia smiled gratefully. It could be considered that they had saved her from suffocating to death. Welcome back, Letitia. Rin stepped forward and congratulated Letitia on her return. Thanks for your hard work, Rin, Letitia said to Rin apologetically. Then Letitia looked around. Speaking of which, where did Sir Villo go? That guy. Maybe he went to have fun by himself. 16 Knights, who was casually sitting on the sofa, waved his hand. At this time, Wuming's voice was heard. Your words really hurt me, Shikuni Koen. Chapter 601. A purplish-black portal suddenly appeared beside 16 Knights, and Wuming walked out of it. Villo-sama. Letitia looked at Wuming gratefully and bowed. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Wuming walked in front of Letitia and rubbed her head. I didn't do anything. If you want to thank someone, thank 16 Knights. Your return depended on him. Hey bro, are you making fun of me? Hearing Wuming's words, 16 Knights suddenly shouted in a bad mood. Although I have other ways, I've only contributed a little in this matter. Let's just go through the motions. After all, if it wasn't for Wuming, then Luos definitely wouldn't have started the gift competition. And even without 16 Knights, there was still Jiufei Niao and Kasuga Hiroyuki to win the gift competition, Not to mention that Wu Ming himself could participate. What credit? If it's mine, no one could take it away. But if it's not mine, then I definitely won't take it away. 16 Nights' evil aesthetic was fully exposed. By the way, since Sama already took Perseus, why not just transfer me to No Name? Why do you still want to have a gift competition? Letitia complained. This was simply Wu Ming giving his own things as a prize for the gift competition that his community participated in. It was very strange in itself. However, Wu Ming shook his head at Letitia's complaint. It's not the same, Letitia. Although Wu Ming was also a member of No Name, donating his own things to the community felt like giving alms. Although Letitia might become Wu Ming's possession again, moreover, the limelight had been stolen by Wu Ming alone this time. No matter what, they had to give the others a chance to perform. Although Jiufei Niao and Kasuga Hiroyuki still didn't appear, and the most important thing was, we still have to rely on this gift competition to establish our prestige, Blonde Lowly, 16 Nights said rudely to Letitia. Only then did Letitia remember that she had ruined No Name's plan to build up its reputation. I'm really sorry, everyone. Letitia bowed to everyone guiltily. Then, Wu Ming flicked her head. But it's fine as long as the result is good. Wu Ming smiled as he looked at Letitia, who was crouching down with tears in her eyes due to the pain in her head. Although he knew that Letitia might be a few hundred years old, she was still a cute creature. Speaking of which, what happened to the plan? Wu Ming looked at Run. This time, Mr. 16 Nights performed very well. Coincidentally, he also met the subordinates of the high-level Demon King in the gift competition. He successfully made a name for himself. At this moment, Ren acted like a leader and was quite calm. All in all, the plan was a great success. 16th Nights raised his arm to show his victory. Well, it's fine as long as the plan is completed. Wu Ming shrugged his shoulders. Actually, Wu Ming didn't know what the gift competition was about. Wu Ming only told Luos to play according to the original game. But even so, Wu Ming still dared to let 16th Nights participate in the gift competition. This was the so-called trust. Wu Ming believed that 16th Nights could win, and 16th Nights didn't disappoint Wu Ming. Not to mention, 16th Nights also met the subordinates of the high-level Demon King in the box court, which really made No Name famous. However, since there were high-level people participating in the gift competition, it seemed like Letitia's identity wasn't ordinary. Wu Ming looked at Letitia, who was still rubbing her forehead with tears in her eyes, and was once again struck by her cuteness. Shaking his head, Wu Ming threw the question of Letitia's identity to the back of his mind and started the main topic. I just went to Byakuya's place to ask about some things. Wu Ming's expression began to become serious, which made Komodo Asuka and Haruai Hiroyuki stop teasing Black Rabbit and become serious. Now, Letitia, I'll give you 3 choices. Wu Ming looked at Letitia. First, become my dependent and share my honor and disgrace, but the price is to become my person. Second, accept my blessing, but the price is to receive another blessing every once in a while, and the process may be very cruel for you. Third, don't accept the above 2 proposals. Give up becoming my dependent, and give up receiving my blessing. Wu Ming briefly finished the 3 choices. Although it was brief, it was easy to understand, and there was no one present who didn't understand. But Letitia was puzzled. But, Sama, didn't you say that after I return to No Name, you will let me accept your power and become the guardian of No Name? This seemed to be different from what he said at the beginning. Of course, it wasn't that Letitia was calculative, but she was puzzled by the 3rd choice Wu Ming gave her. If the first and second choices were to choose the way to obtain power, then the 3rd choice was to let Letitia give up. Letitia didn't understand Wu Ming's intention. After Letitia asked this question, the scene fell into silence. Because of this silent atmosphere, even Black Rabbit didn't dare to rub her rabbit ears. After a moment, Wu Ming sighed. It's actually like this, Letitia. Then, Wu Ming told Letitia the reason. In other words, you can't find a way for me to recover my strength and obtain godhood for the time being, but you don't want me to bear your shackles, so you gave me 3 choices? Letitia concluded Wooming's words. But Letitia smiled. You're really gentle, Mr. Villo. Gentle? Gentle? Wooming was surprised. He didn't think he was gentle. Wooming just didn't want Letitia to sell him to Wooming without knowing why. But it seemed to be a little gentle, cough, cough. In short, you can choose the third choice, but you don't have to worry. I will see if I can help you find your godhood in the future and restore your strength. But Letitia directly rejected. No need, Mr. Villo. Then, Letitia looked firmly at Wooming's eyes that were the same color as hers. I choose the first choice. Become my dependent. But you have to know, if you become my dependent, there is a high possibility that there is no way to remove it. At least Wooming tried to see if he could remove it. Then, Mr. Wooming, if I become your dependent, I won't be able to stay in No Name? Of course not. The disadvantage is that you will be branded with my mark and share my life. It won't affect you in any other way. Wooming shook his head. Then, Wooming looked at Ren, Black Rabbit, and the others. What about you guys? Don't you object to Letitia's decision? But they all shook their heads in response to Wooming. Even if we are companions, we will respect Letitia's senpai's choice. Black Rabbit looked indignant. Black Rabbit is right. Our companions chose the right path. We have no right to stop them. Ren added, I didn't do anything this time. I won't say anything. Jiu Yuanfei crossed her arms and sat on the sofa. Same. Haruai Toshi nodded and sat down with Jiu Yuanfei. Finally, Wooming looked at 16th Knights. Hey, what are you looking at me for? I don't care about such troublesome things. 16th Knights had a whatever-you-want look. After sighing, Wooming finally looked at Letitia. Letitia, you might not understand the importance of becoming my dependent. Come here. Wooming gestured at Letitia. Letitia obediently walked over. Then, Wooming squatted down and pressed his forehead against Letitia's. Instantly, Wooming passed the description of dependent's ability to Letitia. After a moment, Wooming stood up and looked at Letitia again. I see. Is that what Villo-senpai meant? Letitia nodded thoughtfully. Then, do you still have the option to continue, Letitia? But Letitia smiled. Yes. Looking around at everyone, then looking at Letitia, Wooming sighed. If that's the case, then so be it. Wooming squatted down again and smiled at Letitia. It's too late to regret, my dependent. But Letitia smiled back. Yes, my master. Chapter 602. There wasn't much fancy light. Wu Ming and Letitia just held hands, and the contract ceremony was over. Is it over? Black Rabbit stared at Wu Ming and Letitia curiously with her big rabbit eyes. Ren was also curious. As for the three problem children, although they were not as obvious as Black Rabbit and Ren, Wu Ming still noticed their curious gazes. At that moment, Wu Ming could only smile helplessly. What do you want to see? A dazzling magic array? Shi Feng shrugged as he walked over to the sofa and sat down. Letitia also followed Wu Ming over, but she did not sit down with him. Instead, she stood behind Wu Ming. She was completely treating herself as Wu Ming's dependent. Well, Letitia, although you are still my dependent, you don't have to always follow me. Nominally, you are still a companion of no name. Wu Ming corrected Letitia's thoughts. However, Letitia was more stubborn than Wu Ming imagined. But master, you are indeed my master, aren't you? Letitia feels that there is nothing wrong with serving master. Letitia smiled slightly. I'm a member of no name, but before that, I am master's dependent. This made Wu Ming somewhat helpless. Wu Ming always felt that his dependent incarnation had the intention of brainwashing. However, Wu Ming's thoughts were not wrong. After all, this was an ability evolved from the combination of two gods' authority and Wu Ming's own power. How could it be as simple as a contract? Once a contract was signed with Wu Ming, whether it was forced or voluntary, this contract would subtly make the dependent who signed the contract truly become Wu Ming's person, whether it was physically or mentally. Well, after all, Mr. Villo has already become Senior Letitia's main god. I think Senior Letitia's approach is not wrong. Black Rabbit smiled. It didn't matter what it was as long as their companions could be together with everyone in no name, safe and sound. This was Black Rabbit's simple and greedy way of thinking. Lord God, or whatever, you can't actually say that. No, forget it, just think of it that way. Holding on to the idea that the more he explained, the messier it would get, Wu Ming simply allowed the Black Rabbit to fantasize. It was fine as long as it did not cause any harm. I am quite envious of you, little brother. Now you have a blonde lowly maid. I would like to try it. 16 Knights jokingly said enviously. However, 16's words made Letitia's eyes slightly lit up. It was not only Letitia's interest, but Haru's interest as well. You don't say. I haven't enjoyed being served by a blonde maid before. He had to admit that Distant Bird was indeed a young mistress. It seemed like she had quite a few maids at home. Envious. Haru's face was, who was a fake who was a who, was a who was a who was, and who was who. I have received service from many people, and I have even received service from people of other races. Wu Ming said, as if he was reminiscing. In Connaught, although Wu Ming was Maeve's guard, in that place where the strong were respected, Wu Ming was still very respected. In Camelot, as an extremely senior knight, Wu Ming also had many servants. In Uruk, Wu Ming had become a god, so naturally, the service would not be less. Wu Ming's entire nasalic was Wu Ming's, so naturally, he had many subordinates. Wu Ming in the Godslayer's world was also treated as a king, and Wu Ming in Rick's world also had a group of skywing species. Thinking about it this way, was Wu Ming actually a person of the bourgeoisie? Oh, then have you ever received service from a blonde maid? Haru asked with interest. As expected of a young mistress, she really was an evil bourgeoisie. Asterisk, omega asterisk, asterisk, although I don't have a blonde maid, I do have a blonde female knight in another world. Wu Ming thought of Erica, who is also a young mistress like Haru's Haru. Speaking of which, she is also a young mistress of a European noble family. A noble female knight. Letitia's eyes turned cold. Letitia emitted a slightly terrifying aura. Wu Ming was stunned, but he immediately reacted. As a vampire, Letitia was known as a knight of the box court. In this way, her attributes were duplicated. Golden-haired, noble, knight, and silent subordinates. This made Letitia a little unhappy. Cough, cough. But she didn't become my dependent. She only serves me in name. When Wu Ming said this, Letitia's terrifying aura dissipated. I'm sorry, master. Your power is a little too strong. I can't control it for the time being. Letitia bowed to Wu Ming and apologized. Just the fluctuation of her emotions caused a change in her aura. It was enough to show that Letitia's strength had recovered. Senior Letitia, are you really okay? Do you need to rest? Black Rabbit looked at Letitia with slight worry. There were also drawbacks to suddenly obtaining great power. It meant that she was not proficient in controlling it. There's no need, Black Rabbit. I'm just not used to it. I'll be fine after a while. Letitia expressed that she wanted to stay by Wu Ming's side. At this time, Wu Ming spoke. Since Letitia doesn't want to, then don't force it. After all, after becoming Wu Ming's dependent, Letitia was like a spring resurrection. She did not look weak at all. Speaking of which, little brother, your blonde loli is really interesting. 16 Knights looked at Letitia with fighting spirit. Obviously, Letitia had aroused 16 Knights' interest in the strong. Speaking of strength, Wu Ming wanted to ask something. Right, Letitia, how was your strength before? Wu Ming looked at Letitia behind him. My strength before? If I didn't lose my quintessence, I would be in the 4 digits. Letitia thought and responded to Wu Ming. 4 digits, huh? Wu Ming nodded. In Wu Ming's opinion, 16 Knights' strength should also be in the 4 digits. And now, after becoming Wu Ming's dependent, Letitia's strength should have returned to the 4 digits. In short, it should not be worse than before. Oh, interesting to be able to have a blonde noble in the 4 digits be your maid. Little brother, you're really lucky. 16 Knights laughed and teased. And I need a lot of people to serve me. Hiroi, Toshi said lightly. It seems that your experience is more interesting than we thought. Jiuyuki said with interest. Jioyuki's words also got Haruai Toshi's agreement. Agreed. I want to hear the Villo's story from before. The story from before. Wuming thought for a while. There was nothing important at the moment, so it was not impossible to talk about it. Then, Wuming looked at everyone's interested faces and smiled. Well, in that case, I'll talk about my story. Chapter 603. Everyone sat around the coffee table in the meeting room, listening to Wuming telling his story. Then, did you really defeat the last king? Didn't you say that he's immortal? Jiufei Niao leaned forward like a child, looking at Wuming in anticipation. Although Rama is immortal, it doesn't mean that he can keep fighting. I'll just beat him back to his original form. Wuming shrugged. Original form? Black Rabbit was shocked. Could a god be beaten back to his original form? Wuming smiled helplessly as he noticed Black Rabbit's shock. The original form I'm talking about is his weapon, the Savior Divine Sword. Since he's the last king, the hero, the gods gave him an amalgamation of countless god relics. That's the Savior Divine Sword, Wuming said and waved his hand. A sacred sword appeared in Wuming's hand. It was the Savior Divine Sword. However, since Wuming was in his spiritual form, the Savior Divine Sword was not the real thing. Instead, it was the spirit of the Savior Divine Sword. Just like a servant's relic, it was not a physical relic. Instead, it was an amalgamation of powerful magic. The Savior Divine Sword was just like that. If someone defeats him, he'll return to the Savior Divine Sword. When he returned to the Savior Divine Sword, I replaced him and squeezed Rama out of it. Everyone gathered around the Savior Divine Sword immediately. It's really a powerful weapon. Ren looked at the sacred sword in Wuming's hand in all seriousness. He could feel a powerful pressure from the sword. You squeezed Rama out of it? I'm really curious how you did it. Jiufei Niao tapped the Savior Divine Sword softly. Wuming smiled helplessly. That's just a metaphor. I've just replaced Rama as the last king. If that's the case, aren't you a god? 16 Knights put his hands in his pockets. Actually, I have been one for a long time. Wuming stared at 16th Knights with his dead fish eyes. Although Wuming had only told the story of the Godslayer world, he had also told everyone about the god of disobedience and the parallel world. After all, if Wuming were to bump into someone like Romo in the courtyard, it would be awkward if he didn't know who that person was. Wuming also told everyone that he had once been worshipped as a god. Yes, Lord Ghost Deity. 16 Knights waved his hand casually, looking rather perfunctory. By the way, Villo, since you've obtained the Blade of Salvation, did you inherit the godly equipment as well? Jiao Yuanfei asked as he toyed with the Blade of Salvation. In response, Wuming smiled. Of course, I won't return those divine artifacts to the gods of that parallel world. As Wuming spoke, he tossed the Blade of Salvation away gently. In an instant, the Blade of Salvation flew behind Wuming and disintegrated in the air. In the next moment, the space behind Wuming fluctuated and the outline of a square appeared. Then, a phalanx containing all kinds of weapons with golden hair and ancient auras appeared behind Silent Blade. Everyone was stunned. Judging from the ancient and powerful aura, they were sure that those divine artifacts were authentic. However, there was a trace of strangeness to these genuine goods, as if they were mirages. That was because the Blade of Salvation was a spiritual body. Even the weapons in the mandala square formation were spiritual bodies. Wuming felt that he was becoming more and more like a hero spirit. His body, relic, and everything else were similar. Of course, as long as he could find his original body, everything would be fine. Maybe it's because the last king is Rama. The storage space created by the gods is similar to the mandala square formation, Wuming said as he put away the mandala square formation. My master is really an incredible person, Letitia, who was sitting beside Wuming, said with a smile. After all, Wuming took a long time to tell the story. Hence, in the middle of the story, Wuming asked Letitia to sit down. I'm grateful for everything that I've encountered. It's because of those stories that my life is so fulfilling. Wu-Ming's open-mindedness made the members of No Name look at Wu-Ming in a new light. Are you an imposter? Zhou Yuanfei squinted her eyes. Why? Why do you say that? Wu-Ming asked awkwardly, as he did not understand. The Villo is obviously a problematic child. How could a problematic child say something like that? Harahai, Yoshi nodded. That's why, little brother, you have to learn from us. 16 Knights spread out his hands with an arrogant expression on his face. Then, 3 slapping sounds were heard. Slap, slap, slap. Black Rabbit took a paper fan and hit 16 Knights, Asuhaib Yoshi, in Yoshi's heads. The 3 of you are problematic children. Although Mr. Villo is slightly problematic, compared to the 3 of you, Mr. Villo is much more stable. Don't lead him astray. Black Rabbit looked at the 3 problematic children angrily with a paper fan, warning them not to lead Wu-Ming astray. Wu-Ming touched his nose in embarrassment. Then, the 3 problematic children answered Black Rabbit with a smile. Don't worry, we'll definitely take action against the Villo. You 3 problematic children. Black Rabbit was going crazy. Then, Run, the good guy, started to mediate between them. He stopped watching Black Rabbit and the other 3's farce and looked at the sky outside. Unknowingly, it's already so late? Wu-Ming said faintly. The sky outside was already dark, and the sun had already set. As Wu-Ming's wife, Letitia spoke. Indeed, Master, your story is very fascinating. Lily came here once before, but because she saw that Master was so interested in your story, she left on her own. Oh, Lily came before? I'm sorry, Wu-Ming said apologetically. The Lily that Wu-Ming and Letitia were talking about was the oldest child besides Run. She was a cute half-beast lowly. The 3 meals for the contestants in No Name were basically prepared by Lily. Previously, when Lily came to look for them, it was probably to invite them to eat. However, because everyone was too engrossed in Wu-Ming's story, it was delayed. All right, it's already very late. Lily and the others must be waiting anxiously. Let's hurry over. After stopping the farce between Black Rabbit and the problematic children, everyone left the meeting room and went to the cafeteria. Somewhere in the forest that belonged to the end of the world, Glea and the unknown girl were brought to a cave by the unkillable Maxwell. Just as they reached the entrance of the cave, 2 figures walked out. A man with a cloak, whose face could not be seen clearly, and judging from his height, he looked like a 10-year-old child. A woman with a similar cloak and a golden harp, whose face could not be seen clearly, walked out. The woman walked beside the boy, and it was obvious who was in the dominant position. Did something happen? The boy asked. As soon as the boy spoke, Glea and the girl bowed their heads respectfully. Sorry, Your Highness, we met his soul. The girl who was stabbed by Wu-Ming lowered her head and said guiltily, If it's him, it's not strange that you're not his match. Being able to escape from him with just a little injury is already very good. His Highness seemed to know about Wu-Ming's strength, so he did not blame the girl. Then, His Highness looked at Maxwell. Thank you, Maxwell. If it weren't for you this time, Ling and Elder Ge would be in trouble. However, in the face of His Highness' gratitude, Maxwell did not seem to appreciate it. I'm just following orders. It's better to be careful in the future. After all, even if I were to face him, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with him. Maxwell said casually. He still remembered that his body was shattered by Wu-Ming's blow. If it weren't for his special body, he would have died long ago. His Highness did not say anything about Maxwell's disrespect, ignoring the issue of position. After all, Glea and Ling were able to come back this time because of him. Your Highness, what should we do next? The woman beside His Highness asked. His Highness smiled casually. Isn't that Demon King going to collect companions? I have a feeling that No Name will definitely go against her. We just have to wait and see. Glea, Ling, and the black-robed woman replied respectfully. Yes. Only Maxwell did not respond to His Highness. However, His Highness was used to it. However, being used to it did not mean that he could tolerate it. Chapter 604. Wu-Ming's time in the box court didn't pass slowly. After Letitia's gift competition ended, Wuming acted as if he was living in the library. If he had nothing to do, he would stay in the no-name underground library, flipping through books to supplement his knowledge. Ren and 16 Nights would also come to the library from time to time. The former wanted to increase her knowledge as a community leader, while the latter was simply interested in books. It had to be said that 16 Nights was surprisingly smart. As a result, the male core members of No Name became friends of the library. As for Jyo Asuka, Haruai Hiroyuki, Black Rabbit, Letitia, and the other women, when they had nothing to do, they would chat and have tea parties. And when they had nothing to do, they would participate in the gift competition. By the way, 16 Nights and Run were the same. After all, the two of them came to the library to read in their free time. They weren't like Wuming, who almost treated the library as his home. Because they showed off their skills in the gift competition held by Perseus, with Letitia as the prize, they also made a name for themselves. Although no one came to join No Name, now No Name wasn't a community that everyone looked down on. At the very least, No Name changed from the No Name that was invaded by the Demon King to the No Name that has some ability in the name of defeating the Demon King. No matter what, it was better than not having anything. The three problem children participated in various gift competitions because of their interest. As the community leader, Ren also participated in a few gift competitions that weren't too difficult, but she spent most of her time in the library with Wuming. As for Black Rabbit, she continued to do the work provided by White Yiksha, acting as a referee to earn money for the community. Although Wuming sold Perseus after Letitia's gift competition, because the no-name people thought that it was Wuming's private property, they rejected Wuming's unconditional gift and chose to borrow it. In fact, it was mainly the three problem children who were making a ruckus. Words like, "I don't accept charity," and "I'm ashamed of it," kept coming out of his mouth. This made Rinha Black Rabbit subtly reject Wuming's donations. Left with no choice, Wuming could only use the excuse of borrowing to lend most of the money from Perseus to No Name. Thanks to this, No Name's food became better. After all, the money that Wuming lent to No Name was half of the assets of Perseus after the sale of Perseus. A community that was originally worth 5 figures was worth a lot of money. But why was it only half of his assets? Cough, cough. After all, Wuming was also short of money. Although Wuming could sell some of his treasures for a good price, he had to keep the good stuff for himself. And now, the situation had turned into a situation where Black Rabbit was working hard to earn money for Wuming, its creditor. Even if it was its partner's money, Black Rabbit would not take it for granted. It was not strange for it to work hard to earn money to repay Wuming. Actually, the most important thing was Black Rabbit's race. The Moon Rabbit was a race that sacrificed and contributed. This kind of freeloading made the Black Rabbit feel a deep sense of guilt. Wuming could not say anything, so he could only let Black Rabbit do whatever it wanted. However, there was one thing worth celebrating. Black Rabbit finally did not have to sell its body to earn money. It listened to White Yiksha and changed into specific clothes. Its reward for being a judge would be doubled. White Yiksha was angry for a few days because of this. Wuming once again took out some good stuff to share with White Yiksha. Only then did White Yiksha stop throwing tantrum. Wuming could not help but doubt White Yiksha's integrity. All in all, No Name had begun to prosper. In the morning, Wuming woke up from his sleep. The first thing he did when he opened his eyes was to look at the sunlight outside the window. Although Wuming looked like he was going to live in the library, that was only a metaphor. Wuming was still living in the room he had chosen. What a nice weather. Wuming stretched and slowly sat up from the bed. That's why, Master, don't stay in the library anymore. Go out for a walk and participate in some gift competitions. Letitia's distressed voice came from Wuming's room. Wuming did not find it strange that Letitia was in his room because Wuming had basically spent his days in No Name like this. Wuming went from not adapting on the first day to being casual now. It could only be said that time really changed a person. 16 nights and the others are enough. I'd better read honestly, Wuming said casually. However, it's still better to go out for a walk. Even as a ghost, I can't stand staying in the library for a long time." While speaking, Wuming looked at where Letitia was. Then, Wuming, who was staring at Letitia's figure, did not know whether to laugh or cry. At that moment, Letitia had removed her red jacket and replaced it with a blue and white lowly maid outfit. By the way, on the first day that Letitia became Wuming's dependent, she had appeared in Wuming's room dressed like this. Otherwise, with Wuming's temperament, how could he not adapt to having a girl in his room in the morning? The thing he was most uncomfortable with was Letitia's maid outfit. Although I've asked many times, Letitia, I still can't help but ask, as my dependent, why do you have to wear a maid outfit? Wuming asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Then, although this subordinate has answered Master many times, this subordinate will still answer you that this is the necessary equipment to serve Master. Listening to Letitia's serious, lowly voice and looking at Letitia's serious, lowly face, Wuming really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In Wuming's view, Letitia was definitely interested in the maid that 16 Nights said before. Although I don't like maid outfits, in order to better serve Master, this subordinate deliberately endured the humiliation and chose to wear this outfit, Letitia said seriously. However, in Wuming's view, Letitia was completely enjoying it. However, Wuming had given up struggling. Anyway, Letitia wearing a maid outfit was not bad. Just treat it as eye candy. Shaking his head, Wuming moved his body and prepared to get off the bed. Master, do you need to wash up? Letitia was really like a maid, asking Wuming. Same old rules, Wuming said casually. Letitia nodded. Then Letitia's shadow floated, and some toiletries appeared. Wuming was not surprised by this scene, because Letitia had been serving Wuming since the beginning, and Wuming was used to it. After a few minutes, Wuming finished washing up. Then, under Letitia's service, Wuming walked out of the room. As soon as he opened the door, Wuming saw an acquaintance. "Oh, you're finally up." Chapter 605. Flying Bird. Wuming was slightly surprised. That's right, the person that Wuming saw when he opened the door was one of the 3 problem children, Jiu and Fei. At this moment, Flying Bird was wearing a red dress that Black Rabbit helped to modify. She crossed her arms and looked at Wuming. It seemed like she had been waiting for Wuming for a long time. "What a surprise, you actually came looking for me." It wasn't that their relationship was bad, but because Jiu and Fei usually worked with the girls. When she was with Wuming and the other boys, it was always a scene where everyone was present. Just like now, Jiu and Fei came looking for Wuming alone, which really surprised Wuming. "What's there to be surprised about? I naturally came looking for you for something." Jiu and Fei raised her eyebrows and said unhappily. But just as Jiu and Fei finished speaking, her stomach growled. Rumble. This made Jiu and Fei's face instantly turn red. Wuming and Letitia looked at each other and smiled. Then Wuming opened his mouth. "You haven't eaten yet, right? Let's talk as we walk." Jiu and Fei nodded. Wuming and Jiu and Fei walked side by side. The maid Letitia followed behind Wuming. On the way to the no-name cafeteria, Wuming asked Jiu and Fei why she was here. Then, "Why did you come looking for me?" But Jiu and Fei was a little dissatisfied with Wuming. "You rascal, didn't you say that after the matter with Letitia was over, we would study my gift together? Did you forget?" Jiu and Fei pouted. Wuming's body slightly paused. Then Wuming smiled at Jiu and Fei. "Ow! How could I forget? It's just that these 2 days, I was a little addicted to the books in the library. Actually, I decided not to go to the library today. I was going to look for you." Wuming answered Jiu and Fei awkwardly. "Letitia can testify for me. I really did decide not to go to the library today, right, Letitia?" Wuming looked at Letitia and gave her a look. This made Letitia not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But no matter what, this was her master. She still had to give her some face. "Miss Flying Bird, Master really did decide not to go to the library today, although he didn't want to go look for you. But this was something that Letitia would definitely not say." "I'll believe you for now." Jiu and Flying Bird did not say anything else. However, She wasn't stupid enough to believe that Letitia was Wu Ming's subordinate. She was just giving Wu Ming face. After breakfast, Wu Ming and Jiu Yuanfei came to a wasteland in No Name. Beside them, Letitia, 16 Knights, Haruai Hiroyuki, Black Rabbit, Ren, and the others. Even the little fox girl Lily came. At that moment, Wu Ming cursed helplessly. I say, why is everyone here? The one who answered Wu Ming turned back to 16 Knights with interest. Isn't it obvious? Little brother, how can we miss out on something as interesting as researching gifts? 16 Knights' words made Haruai Hiroyuki nod in agreement. Black Rabbit, because I don't have work today, I heard that Miss Flying Bird and Mr. Villo are researching gifts, so I came. Black Rabbit smiled and touched his head. I. Ren stuttered as he tried to explain, but Wu Ming interrupted him. Okay, I'm not blaming you. There's no need to find a reason. If you want to see it, just come. Wu Ming shook his head. Then, Wu Ming looked at Jiu Yuanfei. Then let's begin, Flying Bird. Okay. Jiu Yuanfei nodded. But what should I do? Jiu Yuanfei asked. Although it was researching gifts, how should she research her aura? That's easy. Wu Ming smiled. Isn't your gift domination? If I'm not wrong, you haven't tried to dominate inanimate objects. Because of her dislike of the gift of domination, Jiu Yuanfei tried not to use it. After hearing Wu Ming's words, Jiu Yuanfei nodded. Jiu Yuanfei had no choice but to use domination on inanimate objects. Needless to say, Jiu Yuanfei wouldn't use domination on inanimate objects. Then, you could try domination on inanimate objects. After Wu Ming said that, he snapped his fingers. A sword that looked exactly like the divine blade of salvation, or rather, Excalibur, appeared in Wu Ming's hand. This is a fake holy sword that I created using magic. When you say its name, it can release a shockwave of light. As he said that, Wu Ming threw the sword at Jiu Yuanfei. Miss Flying Bird, facing such a sharp weapon, everyone was shocked. Black Rabbit even shouted. Not only was the crowd shocked, even Miss Jiao Fei Niao was shocked. Stop! As if his words were a law, the fake holy sword that Wu Ming threw out wobbled and stopped in the air. Then, as if the words of a bird were too weak, the fake holy sword only stopped for a moment before it fell to the ground and stuck firmly in the ground. At the same time, Jiu Yuanfei showed a tired expression. It seemed like Jiu Yuanfei was not able to control inanimate objects well. She still lacked training. However, this was also related to the object that she controlled. Although the fake holy sword was a fake, it was still a holy sword. At most, it could be considered a temporary holy sword. Wu Ming guessed that Jiu Yuanfei, who did not train herself, would not be able to control the fake holy sword well. Just as Wu Ming was thinking, Jiu Yuanfei opened her mouth angrily. What are you doing? It's too dangerous. Jiu Yuanfei put one hand on her waist and pointed at the fake holy sword in front of her as she angrily said to Wu Ming. Obviously, if Jiu Yuanfei did not control the holy sword would have landed on Jiu Yuanfei's head. Sorry. That was also to test your ability. After all, a person's potential will only explode in danger, right? Wu Ming apologized sincerely. Although humans were such animals, Wu Ming's actions still made Jiu Yuanfei unhappy. However, a serious expression appeared on Wu Ming's face. Although that is the case, I will definitely not let my comrades get hurt. If you did not stop that sword, I would have destroyed it before it landed. Silent Bird's words about not letting his companions get hurt made Jiu Yuan Flying Bird feel a little better. If you are in danger next time, I will not let you get hurt as well. Consider this as me owing you a favor. Wu Ming smiled. Then it's a deal. Jiu Yuanfei looked as if she had taken advantage of him. Then what should we do next? However, Wu Ming's next words shocked everyone. Pick up that fake holy sword and attack me, Yuanfei. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.